Right, we're back for another episode of Sharp and Scale. This one is going to be during MSI that we're recording it, even though it's only sort of tangential that the topics will be related to MSI. But as you will see from the first topics, let's just jump straight into it. I think it's actually the spiciest one as well, is my topic. And guess what? Yes, if you know the things I am interested in, this is directly informed by MSI, because my topic sounds really general, doesn't it? It just says, which are the best players who have failed a lot internationally. And obviously, I'll just say, I was thinking of JackeyLove, wasn't I, when this happened, because I'm so sick and tired of telling everyone who doesn't watch the LPL, you don't understand, he's really insanely good. And then they're like, and I have to see every time, like, oh, well, even though, by the way, he wasn't to blame for the Team Secret Wales one, but he didn't help matters in the other ones, put that way. So, okay, I actually want you two to go first for this, because I've got a few names myself, but I want to see where everyone's at, because I actually also think this is a pretty wide open one. Notice the only real attenuating factor is you have to be, I think, a great player or a very good player. I don't want it to be bad players, because obviously they are expected to fail. I think actually the reason the JackeyLove one is a good example is because he is someone who clearly is excellent at the game. Like, he actually has the raw talent profile to be like the best ADC that ever played the game. But I genuinely, I would struggle in any esport to think of someone who was that good, who failed this consistently. It's crazy. So for League, what are you thinking of? Where are we going first, boys?
Yeah, so you have to kind of like determine for each person what counts as failure. Because sometimes you have players which, like, they lost the tournament, but actually they finished semi-finals. That's good enough for them. Yeah. And I think one which is really interesting is because I think it's become their legacy. This one's really interesting. I think this one is very much, you have to view it from the time it happened. I think perhaps looking back at it, maybe it's a bit harsh, but at the time, I think Khan was well up on that list. Even though the whole thing about Khan was that he came second in so many international events. And you think, wow, world's finalist, MSI finalist, incredible results for so many other people. The reason I still have to put Khan on there is because he was so damn good, and the premise of this question is who are the best players, and the question isn't how badly they failed, it's just failed a lot. And he did come second in almost everything his entire career. He was one of the best top laners of all time. When we had a previous episode talking about perhaps, who is the second best top laner of all time, Khan was mentioned in that conversation. He never got his international title, and Khan has to be on that list for me due to the wording of the question.
I mean, I love this question because basically there's no way that we are not going that we can avoid triggering somebody for this because a garbage player is just not going to make this list at all, right? It has to be really insane players. Like I think,
and it even applies to both of the major regions. There's no one safe on this one, as pointed out. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think Khan is a really good chat. He was my top lane. I actually have 6 for this, and Khan, but I only had one top laner.
Can I just throw a couple of just qualifying things in for Khan? Because I realized that I should probably throw it in there as well, right? Because Worlds 2017 went in his favorites, lost. MSI 2018 on Longzhu went in his favorites, lost. MSI 2019 went over to SKT, bombed out in semi-finals. Of course, Khan joining SKT was a huge move for him. Then Worlds 2019 bombing out in semi-finals again to G2. MSI 2021 losing to RNG. And then Worlds 21 finals. I think that one you can maybe scratch off because EDG actually, I think at that point, there are a lot of questions around them. But then again, I think a lot of people are writing off the other half of the bracket, right, when they're in the semi-finals. Sure, Khan, those are the big tournaments I think qualify him for that because that's like a bunch of tournaments I could argue he was favorites going in and didn't win it.
Sure, but I mean, the entire, for me, the premise of this question is what are the biggest tragedies in League of Legends history?
Sure,
because
absolutely.
Khan, everyone knew Khan was going to the army at the end of 2021, right?
Yeah.
Like that was the end, and like for people that don't remember his 2021, they won both splits. Wait, just let me quick.
Yeah, they did.
They won
they went to MSI and they went in his first seed to Worlds.
Yeah, and then they lost in the finals of both of those. Like that is like Khan was somebody who went around, but knowing that he was going to the army, we went and made the super team with Showmaker and Canyon, and the entire idea was this would be his chance to just walk off into the sunset with his international title, and they fucked it up.
And also, since both losses were game 5s, he not only lost in game 5, he also was 2 games from a Golden Road technically that year.
Holy moly!
That's
isn't that even cooler?
And I think also the nature. I have to say I didn't go back and watch all of these games in prep for this episode because there were just too many names to go over. But I remember him specifically in the Kill series where they lost wasn't good enough. Like that was one of the biggest things about those finals was actually he was so good for the whole rest of the year. Besides those finals where he lost, it's just so horrifying for him.
And I mean that the tragedy is that's his legacy, right? His legacy is the guy that never fucking wins, right? And I mean, and he went to the army. He didn't come back afterwards. Like, I mean, yeah. For me, top lane, there is only one person I can, in good faith, put here, and yeah, I mean, I fully agree with you on that.
Okay. Well, who are you putting then, Peter?
Who am I putting? Okay, so we did a top laner. I think I'm going to go with a jungler actually, and so we're talking about best players who fail internationally. Well, I've got two junglers here. Which one of these should I do? The one that's going to antagonize the most people first? Or
100%. 100%.
The one that's going to antagonize the most people first?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so then my biggest international underperformer is going to be Elyoya. And I'm going to say...
Oh, that's a fair shout.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to say Elyoya Alvaro specifically, right? Like this combo, Elyoya. So really great player. I mean, I wish he tried more in regular season, but when he turns it on, this guy can be the best jungler in Europe. I think since Skumont has come along, you know, it's a little bit rough, but definitely he can definitely be the second best jungler in Europe whenever he wants. And he had a huge period of time where he could just turn it on and just be the best jungler in Europe, right? But has this guy actually performed like insanely well internationally? I can't even think. It's not since the first year, right?
I mean, I'm going to guess
MSI,
there must be something in the first year because of how well they did generally. But aside from that, you are right. Like, not only can I not think of any like really good series from him, he was part of a lot of really bad failures internationally.
Yeah, and part of
and he's the captain. He tends to be the guy whose DNA is in the team, isn't it? Yeah,
yeah. And he's the captain, and his team. Because of how strong he is domestically, his team relies on him.
Absolutely,
and even in the international performances where he performs 7 out of 10, if you're used to a 10 out of 10 Elyoya and you're suddenly faced with a 7 out of 10 Elyoya, it's not surprising that people don't they're not able to deal with this, right? And I think it snowballs a bit more with Alvaro as well, because Alvaro, again, great. Like, I think Alvaro, in terms of pure hands, may be the best in a non-range support meta, in pure engage meta, melee meta. He is, in my opinion, the best support in the region, right? Not the smartest, but just pure hands, pure clicks, right? And then he goes internationally and he loses his ability. Like, he it's not that he's playing worse, it's not that he's against worse opponents, you know, as Labrov has shown. You know, Labrov is somebody who's kind of maintained his hands. But Alvaro just forgets how to play. And I mean, this is the thing about this combo that really frustrates me, because the things that they do internationally are so different from the things that they do domestically.
Yes.
That
But it is one of the problems they obviously have, Peter, as you're saying here as well, is these aren't either player that you'd ever cut from the team either, because domestically they're the best players. Like, they're actually the generational talent. So you're also kind of trapped while they're in the same. By the way, unironically, on an international level, they're on some Razor humanoid shit where it's like it should work so well, but like, what's the disconnect? What's wrong?
Yeah.
And then you look at the actual failures they had. Like, Worlds 22 went out to EG in play-ins.
Yep.
MSI 23 had the 1557 incident versus T1. Worlds 20, I can't remember Worlds 23, but I do remember Worlds 24. They went out to, well, they lost against like a middling PSG Talon roster, and then GARM. So they went 0-3 in Swiss stage. And then MSI 25, they lost to, admittedly, a very good CFO team, but didn't they just bomb out against like didn't they bomb out twice there? So that's some pretty, just the manner in which they lost those events.
Well, Worlds 2024, they went last place in the Swiss, mate. They lost to GAM at the end. Here's even I'll tell you a sentence that when uttered will immediately make you realise how bad they've been internationally. Considering Elyoya's been to fuck tons of worlds, most of these worlds, even the perceived as impotent Fnatic teams, were in with a better shot to get out. Yeah. They just were. Like, some of them were in like the 2-2 games and were mixing it up, and we're in almost every tournament. Yeah, the international this guy's been to beyond 2021. Like, it can't be a bust, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's worth saying that I'm not putting Razork on this list because I don't believe that Razork. Yeah. You know, Razork has always been flippy. I'm putting Elyoya on this list because I think Elyoya should be better.
No, this one's fair because it's actually someone you can argue is very clutch domestically, but they're actually anti-clutch internationally, aren't they? I don't even know that he chose that. They just never get off the ground. Actually, isn't it? It's just kind of crap, isn't it?
Yeah, like the one that drives me craziest is like there was the Atakan incident, right? When was that? That was.
That would have been 2024.
Yeah, where they should have won. Like, that game was one of the I mean, that should have
been... And, well, I mean, I think that last Worlds, I feel like was more on Super than Elyoya, because this was when Super got caught out alone, and then in the T1 series had some really good moments, and then like went melee range of a Kiana on Corki around that one dragon, on the Vayne, had some good moments, and then just like tumble into others. Like he was just like so mercurial, the best and the worst, right? So it wasn't. I would think that was more of a Super moment than Elyoya moment. He just sadly got dragged down with him. I don't think it was an Elyoya thing. But the other ones, I mean, like, I mean, at the end of the day, the result is still a result, and that's what we're kind of basing this question on.
Sure.
Okay, I've got a couple, and unsurprisingly, because actually in the same vein as Elyoya, I actually do think the most prime role for this to happen to is jungler, unfortunately, because I think great junglers typically aren't dogs. They tend to be people, actually, who are very key to either the shot calling or the like structure of their team, and sometimes even as star players. So if those players ever fail internationally, you are going to fail so hard in the game. So the two, and again, funnily enough, I'm going to split in between the major agencies. I'm going to say it's obviously Peanut from fucking Korea, because again, if we're talking about best player. By the way, notice on some of these ones, like the Peanut Khan, these guys could actually have been like the GOAT of their role if this wasn't the case. Like, they're so good. Like, I've always thought the sad thing with Peanut obviously is a bit like Faker. Most modern day fans only know the captain guy at the end of his career and that he failed. They don't know that he also was like the stud guy and also failed earlier in his career. So that one's brutal, I always thought, especially because actually at the end of his career, the ridiculous thing about Peanut was he'd even like won almost everything else you could win except Worlds. But at that one, he's just so notorious for, and he even started doing the Chovy thing where it's like on demand you choke every single World. I always thought he was even worse than Chovy. Chovy just, I've always said he doesn't really choke, he just doesn't play his best game. Peanut would actively just have nightmare fuel games at Worlds. It was crazy how bad they were.
Actually makes it funnier that he won the first stand to complete the trophy case without
it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Because I mean the thing is, like, it's really harsh in some cases where you think in the very early parts of his career, just kind of gatekept by SKT internationally. It happens, you know, Worlds 2015. Oh no, sorry, he wasn't there for that. But like, couldn't get to MSI 2016. But then Worlds 2016, just the SKT Rock series happened. Then he went over to SKT for 2017 and won MSI with them. So
and by the way, as I will always point out, go rewatch that game if you have fucking eyes. You are not going to see Bengi on his first game do any crazy shot in Italy. What you're actually going to see is, where the fuck is it? Just ask yourself the whole time, where is Peanut? Where is Peanut on the map right now? What's Peanut? Because that should have been a game where Peanut should have destroyed him in that game 5 minutes. That would actually, if anything, that should be remembered as like in that ridiculous G2 TS series where they didn't swap it in that like time, and he didn't even get a chance to play. That should have been considered a draft error that would be like haunting T1. Instead, it's like a legendary moment for fucking Benki, and it's ridiculous.
Which is insane. And then he went on to do MSI. Then he went on to Longzhu, and then obviously what we just talked about with Khan also applies to Peanut there. In fact, actually, I think actually because there are a couple of players which I think are worthy of this, just because of how crazy this failure was from 2017 to 2018 for LCK, because 2017, you have to picture it as effectively Korea, or 2017 going into 2018, really. 2018 is where obviously it falls apart. Like, Korea has had, like, ungodly levels of domination for, like, 5 years. 5 years, ever since Worlds 2013. I mean, there was the one blip at MSI 2015, but I don't think anyone was making the mistake of thinking that like Korea was weak or anything. And it was known as the Korean era of dominance. We've never had another Korean era of dominance because it's just nothing compares. You know, the vision control was better, the team fighting was better, the laning was better, the champion pools were better. You just couldn't beat them. Just you make one mistake and the game was over. And then MSI 2018 happens, and the favorites by a country mile, Longzhu, or King's Own Dragon, actually, they were at that point, I believe they were, with Peanut, you know, one of the legendary junglers, the godfather of battle warding, where you just use your face as a ward and you just go scout them out personally, crashed and burned. Khan was on that roster, Peanut was on that roster, Prey and Gorilla were on that roster, and they probably also deserve a mention too, to some degree. Like, but because of the scale of that one, despite how legendary these players are, but that's the net part of the question is, you know, they have to be good players, they have to be very good players. Like, everyone on that Longzhu / King's Own kind of era, between the failures at MSI 2018 and then Worlds 2018, they need a shout out for that.
Yeah. I mean, but I think Peanut deserves the special shout out for it. And why is that? It's because he's the one that went over to SKT. Like, Praying Gorilla didn't go over to SKT, you know, join the rivals and exactly, the title, you know? Like, Peanut is like the Kevin Durant, you know? Like, he goes and joins the already winning team. So he doesn't get the pass for me.
That's even one of my theories as to why people were just out on him forever as a choker, because their logic was even. You basically joined the team, like Thorin just showed it, where it doesn't matter if you choke, you should win anyway because you got Faker. And he's he's the only one that joined that didn't win. Like, so I think people hate him even more for that, bro. It's like essentially their logic would be his choking ability, overpowered Faker's clutch ability, like when the two mix together or something, you know. By the way, I'll run you down the list just to show how ridiculous, because this guy might even be the case definition of this topic, right? This is a player where all they didn't win was Worlds, guys. They won first stand, they won an MSI, they won the LCK. If you count LCK Cup, they won 8 times, 7 times if you don't count the LCK Cup, and they won the fucking MVP of the LCK. Like, essentially, the only thing missing for this person's resume is Worlds, but the problem is, because there was a lot of Worlds and he failed a lot, that overpowers your memory of all the brilliant players, all the amazing jungle play, and the fact he's in every era and every meta and all different teammates. It doesn't matter at the end, unfortunately, because sadly, the big moments you remember are the failures. And then I hope people can see where this one's going. There's another person that I also thought of for this one, who's the other jungler. He was at this tournament. It's fucking Tian, isn't it? I always tell people this is one of the players that burns me the most, because when he's on his game, he even did it at the beginning of this split when he came back. He's not just good, he is unbelievably good. Like, he has a preternatural ability to like read the fucking map and to make a play. You even saw it. The joke is, the G2 series was the most perfect example ever, because he did it in the series. He actually like smurfed the first 2 games. Game 3, he just, for whatever reason, just decided like, hey, Blabber, hold my beer. I'm about to do an even more insane greed for a crab. That was some great, they talk about the Bible kids shit, you know. And then he turned that into getting reverse swept and completely out the tournament. Zero feel like, that was absurd, mate. Like, that is what he almost like did his whole career within 2 series there. It's unbelievable. Like, it's a small sample size, but shout out for the example of what I'm talking about. Because people are not then throwing, obviously, the 2021 mega failure in that group that had Cloud9 and fucking Rogan and Yes Nam one, but aside from that, you're supposed to, I always think people get this wrong, right? It's true. A group of death is tricky for everyone, because even the bad team in theory has some value. But you're supposed to be the death part of it for the other people when you're the favourite. Like, it's supposed to be Cloud9 and Rogue that go, what the hell, group of death? You're supposed to go, why do I care about this anyway? I'm going to be. So the idea you don't get out of that group is so insane, because people will forget this. There were people who had that FPX team as their number 1 favourite for that tournament. It was between Damwon and FPX. Was most people were split on those 2, and a lot of people were going hard. So that wasn't even just one of like, you can be on a TS and fuck up the odd MSI. That's not that bad, mate. People were already out on you. That was an example where people thought he was going to win another Worlds, bro. People thought that was going to be like the second ring coming through.
Yep.
Thoughts, boys?
I mean, I think that FPX Worlds failure is perhaps the worst individual failure at a World Championship ever, given how good they were. I think because the thing is, like, that just felt like it was a falling apart on a personal level and like a professional level, right? As opposed to like LGD 2015, where it was a meta and there were extenuating circumstances. I mean, I guess you could argue the IG MSI 2019, which we talked about as well. You know, funnily enough, a name which I oddly skipped over in like my prep for this segment, but I think it has to be talked about in Jungle too. With this in mind, actually, it has to be Tarzan, though, doesn't it? It has to be Tarzan to a certain degree, I think, because if you think about his Worlds...
I mean, wasn't he in like 7 finals till he won or something? He used to just always fall apart in the big moment, yeah.
If you think about the manner in which he fell apart internationally, given that, because we, you know, what triggered me onto this, and I think perhaps this borderline is that he didn't go internationally as much as some other people I'd be talking about, so it's like a little bit borderline. I think let's open a conversation about it. I'm feeling I'm feeling the antenna are twigging up on this, though, because I think about his LNG series versus T1 after they came out as first seed from World Swiss in Worlds 23. Completely.
A lot of people thought they were going to win that series. They were favoured. A lot of people had them favoured. Yeah. Yep.
Like I said, if you look back historically, I think LNG 23 Summer were one of the most slept on teams. I thought they were dark horse of the tournament, took the JDG super team to 5. But before that, you know, obviously like failed against the IG team while he was on Griffin. Whatever, that's IG. That kind of is what it is. But that Griffin team going down was very, very painful for him. He got grouped on LNG in Worlds 21 or something, right? I think he got grouped on them. Yep.
That was the one where everyone in the group went tied, and at the end they did tiebreak. Yeah. It was the one that had Team Liquid and Mad Lions,
and then And then 24 lost to BLG. Whatever. I think that one's fine. I don't count that as a failure. No, but I think I think that MSI and Worlds is anyone's legend. I think it's hard to remember this at the time. People were predicting anyone's legend. The teams in interviews were saying, "Oh, anyone's legend should beat T1 at MSI." And then at Worlds, it was a similar kind of thing because T1 looked so bad, and they lost in 5-game series. So I think Tarzan, given that he is actually still on the shortlist for many people, and I think he is on my shortlist somewhere for best jungler of all time, Tarzan has to be in the conversation too. What would you make of that, Peter? Because obviously when I first mentioned that, you pulled a face, and I do get it, but I actually think that the scale of his failures, given his stature, I think you have to talk about him at least.
I mean, so I'll talk about my jungle pick after this. But the problem I have is Tarzan is really good, but is he on the same level as Peanut?
Pretty sweet. I can translate Peter. Here's what he means by that. You sort of said it at the beginning, Nymaera. I meant this more like you individually failed. You're more taking it like he failed his opportunity with his team where they were like, I think Peter's more thinking that. Like, I know what he means. I would put Tarzan more in the trophy box of, you just don't seem to play your 10 out of 10 game internationally. That's the bomber. But I don't think I don't think he had many games though. Maybe he can have that one Worlds. I don't think there was many games internationally though where Tarzan just shit the bed. Like, when I say people like Peanut and Tian, they have some criminal, like, just in the whole game.
No, that's fair. Okay, from that perspective, I understand.
So I mean, for me, like, I've written not in like capital letters with like a list of people that I do not believe belong on this list despite their bad results. And Viper is like the number one not Viper, right? So I didn't put Tarzan in my not.
The joke is he might be about to win a tournament while not even being that good. That's how ridiculous his career is. I know. Whatever.
Exactly. So,
but here's the thing: he's also owed. The Fates and God owe him like a few titles when he's not playing that well. You know, everyone deserves to get carried at the end if you carry the fuck out of everyone and they let you down. Everyone gets one at the end. I think.
I mean, that's the tragedy with Khan, no?
I'll tell you what is scaring me though. I've just realised, Peter. Wait a minute. This is the 1 year of Viper's career. He sort of sucks a bit and checks notes. He has to go to the military, bro. What is this curse? Like, get it out. Peanut had the same thing. Get it out. There's nothing more cursed in League than, hey guys, I'm just hoping I'm going to win that Worlds on my last year ever. Fingers crossed. Like, it doesn't work for Koreans, unfortunately, does it? It's bad.
It's tragedy, right? So like, if I'm not putting Viper on this list, like Tarzan, I feel has tried his best, right? Like,
that's fair.
But I've got one guy who, despite everything, I think.
Go on.
I think is the biggest antagonist. This is the person that has caused people that I respect the most heartbreak of any single League of Legends player, and the person I'm going to put for this is
ClearLove. ClearLove. Ooh, I see what you mean. Okay, so he essentially is the original Chinese jungler that you have to watch the LPL to know he's good. True.
Exactly. So we've talked about LCK dominance. Who are the region that are supposed to contest this LCK dominance? It's a fucking LPL, right? And who wins the LPL every single time? It's ClearLove, right? Who's the one that goes internationally and embarrasses China like almost every single time? You know, Tarzan has never lost to like INTZ in the same way that ClearLove has lost. He's never got grouped. He's never come bottom of his group, right? Like ClearLove came in. It was in his final year at Worlds. Like I remember they came bottom of the group. It was 2017. Okay, where they were in a group with Cloud9 and they ended up coming bottom of the group in a group that had an NA team in it. Right? He's had individual performances that are like tragic at Worlds, right? And this is the problem with ClearLove because his teams are always so good domestically, and whenever he's played,
he's been on the number one seed a lot of times from the LPL. Absolutely,
he's just won every single time, and it's not just winning. He's dominated the other junglers, right? Like I think 2017 was his like last major year, but from the period from like 2014 to 2017, other junglers just quaked in fear playing against this guy. They just couldn't play their game. And then the guy goes internationally. He's the guy, the great hope. You know, the person that Kelsey Moser, the person that Foskurin, you know, they're like, Raz, you know, this is the guy. He's going to bring us a win against Korea. Yeah. And then they fucking lose to Brazil, right? Like, and to me, this is like unacceptable. And this is why I have like ClearLove. He's not quite Peanut tier, but like he's just below Peanut tier for like underperformances.
No, but put it this way, I will say he is one of the only connecting factors in like EDG as a team had that exact same reputation. They always win the LPL and then they go international and then they do nothing. And the joke is half the time they were losing. They're Fnatic and shit like that. Like not even teams that win the tournament. Like also, I'll say this as well, Peter. When you say that, because it's accurate, I actually do think until you actually got to sort of like the MLXG era, I don't think anyone who didn't watch the LPL respected Chinese junglers. Like I can tell you, when Monty was just on the whole thing of like, I'll watch it for interest, but I don't ever think these teams will be as good as Koreans. That's because in the macro era, Koreans were the master junglers, weren't they? Yeah. And the perception of Chinese junglers was just like they either just randomly gank. To be fair, it's more just high activity, you know. But whatever, that was the perception back then because the Korean styles you gank very efficiently, obviously.
Yeah. Or you are Sightstone era as well, so there's just so much control and vision involved in jungle.
Or you are just ClearLove, and the joke is you don't gank, you just farm, and then you're just like a half a carry in a team fight. Which, by the way, is a great idea. You can see why it's a very good strategy for a region that's all about team fighting and 5v5. Like, that's actually a pretty cool idea if you can get to that point. So, I think that's actually quite fair. It's a historical pull, but it's not an unfair one, I don't think.
But I mean, I think the tragedy with ClearLove is that if he just performed at like 80% of the level that he performed in LPL, like he doesn't even have to dominate these games. He just has to not perform at 50% of his level. They don't lose to the European teams. They probably don't lose. They definitely don't lose to the wildcard teams, right? Like losing to Korea is kind of acceptable. But
this is why, though, if you notice, jungler is the main role on this list, because I feel like jungler is the one where the margin is the craziest. Like, you're a hair off your game, you're a bomb, you can't do anything, you're on your game by a hair, you're the greatest thing of all time, he's controlling him, he can't possibly be, it is the most fragile role, I think, of all of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. I've got a pretty spicy one to bring up next if you want, because I think this one, if you're talking about individual failure, I think we have to start talking about Ruler. I think Ruler. I think if you think about Ruler's individual level at Worlds, well, he got grouped back in 2018, right? Got grouped back in 2018 after being world champion the year before. That was the start of it. Worlds 2020, I seem to remember going pretty poorly from him.
That was the one where they lost to G2.
To G2, yeah, they lost to G2 at that Worlds, and again, you can give them some props for that. So again, like the groups at 2018, that was obviously huge at the time because that was when they weren't even called Gen G then, right? They were called like something else. I can't remember what they were called back then. Was it KSV back then?
I think it was already Gen G at this point.
Okay, they were at that point. Okay, cool.
I think that was the first time.
Yeah. And then Worlds 22, they came in with a head of steam, lost to DRX unexpectedly in the bracket. That was already a knock against him. But on an individual level, where I start to get like real eyebrow raises, because Ruler is, for many people, greatest AD carry of all time. We talked about that in previous episode, right? His Worlds 2023 was a disaster versus SKT, versus T1. He was the reason, largely, I think, why they lost that series. I don't think you can...
Luckily for him, because people just remember the Belveth of Kanavi, they forget everyone else who fucked up the series. He definitely had an underwhelming series in that one. Definitely.
He just like randomly clicked a Bard portal out of position on Xayah and cost his team like summoners and team fights. And, you know, I think that he has a lot of underperformances in individual games there too. Well, okay, I can't remember the specific moments outside of that series as much, but that series in particular, I'm like, okay, that literally cost your team the Golden Road with the JDG Super Team, and I would put his individual performance on that.
Similarly, he actually did this twice. He essentially benefited from the fact that because Knight and Chovy got directly compared to Faker, each time they don't win, fans just focus on them, not Ruler, who happens to be next to them in a couple of these instances, and sometimes plays worse. So he's had one of those ones where they've almost been like the distraction to let him get away with having some semi-criminal / didn't show up to the match performance. Is true.
Yeah, then obviously he didn't make it internationally in 24 because he was on JDG, so he wasn't there. But then if you look at, I know his MSIs were really good. Good. But then if you go to Worlds 25 as well, clear favorites to win it, and he was just not good. He just wasn't good.
No.
So you look at how high a level player he is. Again, candidate for GOAT in his role. I think particularly, you know, Worlds 2018, after, you know, being the best AD carry in the world in Worlds 2017. I know the meta changed a lot. It did, right? And it was a very different time. But getting grouped as a Korean team, it just was unthinkable at the time. Yeah. And then I think maybe you can ignore some of the worlds between then and the more modern era, and you think, okay, well, you know, there were a lot of extenuating circumstances, X, Y, Z. But I think individually, you look at Worlds 23 and you look at Worlds 25, and they're like, they stick out like a sore thumb. Like, he just did not perform to expectations. He went in as the favorite and lost heavily. And I think that actually qualifies him for this list.
Yep. And I mean, you don't need to convince me about Ruler. I remember we did our GOATs for the role, and I have Ruler at most people have Ruler at number 1, and I have Ruler at number 3 for this exact reason. For me, it was Viper, Deft, Ruler, because I feel that Ruler gets away with murder for his individual performance, because people only remember the highlight clips, and people only remember the failures of his teammates, right? He doesn't get anywhere near the criticism he gets, and even though his results are better than Viper, to me Viper has always been the kind of guy who goes down with the sinking ship, you know, being the last guy trying to keep everything afloat, whereas Ruler is often the person who is to blame, right, and just escapes it for some reason, right? So I'm fully with you. Like, Ruler was my number. I had Peanut number 1. Yeah, Ruler was like the 3rd on my list after ClearLove.
Also, I'll just say it this way, because it's even better how this has aged. He was gapped at the last Worlds in the semi by Docdam, who now plays for the worst team maybe ever in the LCK DN Supers. Yeah. Like, that's right. Look, to be fair, Docdam had a really good series, but that is like, again, it's one thing if you lose to other legends and other great players. That's like a layup for you, bro. You're Ruler. Again, you're a lot of people's GOAT ADC in a super team. Like, bro, those those are the really embarrassing ones to me. It's one thing to play bad. Like, we're criticising Tarzan for losing a T1 that won Worlds. You lost to fucking Dogdam, Peter, bot lane, Hobie.
Yeah.
Didn't he make like one of the game losing mistakes on Lucian in game 1 or 2 of that series versus KT as well? Where like he just walked up. It might have been Corki actually, where he walked up to the Oni and died. I remember one of the early games in that series. I mean, Canyon straight sprinted it at points, don't get me wrong, but like Ruler had some really bad dash forwards on dash forward champions. I can't remember the specific plays, but between that and again vivid memories of 23, despite the fact that Ruler is one of the best AD carries at MSI ever, between MSI 2023 and 25.
That's unbelievable MSIs,
and again, reminder folks, the only reason these people qualify is because they are great. If they weren't good players, then they wouldn't be on this list. They have to be good enough to make this, which is why it's so heartbreaking.
Yes. I mean, Ruler is better than Dogdam, right? Like this list is who is the player who has lost to players who are worse than them the most, right? I think that's a fair way to like describe what we're saying, right? Like I don't think anyone's going to make the case that Ruler was worse than some of these people that we're saying. You know, it's just that in his performance in these key moments, he just wasn't that player, right? And that's the kind of tragedy with him. Because it's not like he can't perform at this level, because we know, because there was the year that he like solo carried the Worlds win. That was
2017.
2017,
yeah, it has to be 2017,
yeah. But since then, it's been rough, right?
I also think to some degree him actually failing is more egregious too, because here's what's funny. Even though he didn't actually fail at Worlds, someone like an Uzi Ice style of ADC should be, or even JackeyLove should be way more apt to fail actually. They are so balls to the walls now. What's so bizarre about Ruler failing is, to me, he was always more in the depth category of like, they just try to like perfectly play the damage distance, you know, like, that sort of ADC normally is actually really good at surviving and not hinting games and being quite a consistent sort of floor raiser and stuff. But that's the weird thing about Ruler. He either just totally smurfed or he actually was just missing. He wasn't particularly like a consistent day-to-day performer at Worlds. No, I'm with you. And as we point out, he's sort of got away with it too. I don't really feel like there's any splashback for him.
Yeah.
All right, on to the next one. Who's got a spicy one?
Well, I mean, since we just mentioned JackeyLove, should we do the JackeyLove topic?
Yeah,
let's do it.
I mean, the only person to lose to every major region, you know, bringing happiness around the world. That's what I can say. I think JackeyLove.
And as I joked, here's why it's even more egregious. Because remember, now the region isn't even LMS. Like, you know what? If you're some elite player and you lose to like a Maple team or something, I'll give you a brick. CF4, they were pretty good. Bro, this is a Vietnamese team. Like in a BO5 as well, by the way. Like. It wasn't even him that was the main reason why, but you are right. That piece of trivia will haunt him forever, bro. It's lost to every single region. In BO5s as well. That's crazy work.
I mean, that's the second time he's lost the Vietnamese team, no?
I don't know about
he lost in groups, right? But he's not lost in a best of 5. Yeah. So he lost in Worlds 22. He got grouped by them with Knight, obviously, as well.
Yeah.
And that was the horrifying one where they had the more of Malmortius bug with the Karth assault because it full killed him. So basically, so in fairness, like that one actually was determined by a bug, because if he doesnn't die to the Karth assault, I did a slow-mo VOD do this at the time. Basically, if he doesn't die there, because for those of you that don't know, in Worlds 2022 groups, Karthus channels an ult onto a low health Lucian who has a more of Malmortius, and because the damage from Karthus is so high, it one-shots him. So there's a bug where the More Shield never activates and never gives him the shield. Right. If it had done, I think he does get, like, this is like late game. I think he gets the auto attacks off to kill, defend the Nexus, and then run it down. Like run it side of the map. I don't know. It's well out of time now. I haven't thought about this in a while, but my memory was effectively that bug sent them out of Worlds. Doesn't change it being a failure though.
Yeah, I mean the thing about JackeyLove, I find it hard to hate on JackeyLove though, because ClearLove has brought so much pain to people that I respect, right? But JackeyLove has brought so much joy. He's brought so much joy. He's like made people believe that they can beat an LPL team at any point, right? So although he's undoubtedly failed a lot, right? He's contributed more to hope and to the sustenance of the ecosystem long term, right? By losing all of these games, right? So you know, JackeyLove he deserves to be on this list, but like I feel bad like punching down because he's done so much for the longevity of League of Legends.
Yeah, but I'll flip it the other way. The kind of circle I'm with beyond the Monties the world who didn't like the LPL anyway, is that he's caused us unlimited pain, Peter. Because I'll give you the most obvious example. If you're a casual fan, you'll think, what a shit example. It's the best example. Is if you are just taking away people's resume and the nameplates and watching them play the role, mate, I would take pick the JackeyLove player that I would immediately be able to identify, by the way, all day over Aguma Yushi. What are you talking about? Like, Aguma Yushi's a great player, but not on that level. Like, JackeyLove really does have the thing where if you were to design like his like attributes as an ADC, some of them would be a 10, bro. Like, he's actually unbelievable. Like, his mechanics are out of this universe. That's why actually in the latter years, I'm surprised he keeps coming back. He keeps saying he has wrist issues, unsurprisingly. If you see the way he fucking plays the game, like, also a guy who's just going, here's what's really tragic as well. You would think, right, it makes sense when people choke, as in like they literally can't like do something in the game, they choke. This guy's whole thing always was he just sent it. He always just, his whole style's been sending it his whole career. So also, unfortunately, when he then, it's even more egregious, unfortunately, because he will just flat out die in lane. Also, here's another thing that's brutal. He's another one of those fuckers like Peanut, where it's like, mate, just give him any teammates you want. Mate, you can have Knight and you'll fuck it up. You can have Makeup, you fuck it. He can have anyone. You can have Tian, you can have Kanavi. What's sad is they all eventually, before or after, go and have great success elsewhere. But the second they lock in with Jack, they're like, hey, time for this to have the worst tournament of my life. Like, it's crazy work. This guy's so cursed. It's nuts. It's nuts.
I mean, he is one of the peak 2v2 laners ever. Like, I've been watching this guy read.
Oh, I've even realised, here's another thing. He's even narratively cursed because everyone said on the way up, because of how skilled he was supposed to be the successor to Uzi, and the fucker did it the wrong way round. He actually won all the domestic ones and then fucked up all the... Like, that's the wrong way round! Uzi shit is never winning domestically, then being really good at Worlds, so all the plebs think you're the best. You did it the wrong way round, mate. You were the mirror Uzi all along. Yeah. You were the Izu, whatever. We'll workshop that one.
I mean, I think if you were just purely on pure highlight reel, is this the best?
Oh, mate, this is why I was thinking about it. If you were to, by the way, I've actually said this before. Unironically, when I smoke the devil's cabbage, sometimes I do like to look up those like cracked out ones that people do on Twitter, or Chinese ones are the best ones. You know, when they do the super high level graphics of like solo queue. Mate, if you go and look up JackeyLove like pro ones, pro highlights, it is a better highlight package than some mid laners I've seen, bro. It is crazy how good his highlight package is. It is unbelievable. Imagine as well when the likes of the Zerries got released. He has some unreal clips on there. Like, that's why it's so sad. I genuinely think this person could have been like the GOAT ADC, but he is 1 million miles from it because we care about things like how you do at Worlds, bro. He's 1 million. The joke is he could even win Worlds now. He'd still be on this list because he's just done it so many times.
This is the thing. Like, I mean, this question is somewhat tailored to him and TN.
Yes.
Like, because of the MSI thing, obviously you mentioned at the start of it, but we went through a lot of other names and whatever. Realistically, these two are at the top in terms of the amount of times they've failed, the level of the failure, and how good they are outside of those international performances, which just really sucks because they're such great players to watch. I watch them day in, day out. They're some of the most entertaining players to watch on form ever. TN this split, JackeyLove this split, even now, we're just really incredible. They fell off a bit towards the end of the regular split, but, doing it after all this time, you take what you can get. These games are really special from them. So all of these players that we mentioned are tragedies. Go on.
I think it's important though. So I agree. I think these guys are at the top of the list, but I think I like to do one before you do your final one, which is think it's really important to have an NA person on this list. Because
I was thinking the same thing.
Okay, you do your NA one, and I'll argue for the because I've got two NA ones. So you do yours first.
Well, okay. Consider it. Well, you have the qualifying part for this question is they have to be a good player, a very good player.
Yes.
So there are only a handful of people you can choose. So when I think of people who were world-renowned, respected by people across the world for their individual ability, and then bombed out when it mattered most, the person that comes to mind first is Bjergsen. Bjergsen bombed out in MSI 2015, 0-5 in group stage. Bombed out in Worlds 2015, didn't get out of groups. God 2016, great roster, failed to get out of groups. Obviously, I think in the individual level, I don't think that was necessarily on him, but whatever. MSI 2017 failed, and then the biggest one was 0-6 at Worlds 2020. The Worlds 0-6 2020.
Which if you go and look, that group, even though it's like tough, because it's like Fnatic, it's still no winners in the tournament though. It's not like any like favourites. So remember, at the time, I believe no major region had ever gone 0-6. I think it was the first one ever.
Yes.
That was a famous stat even.
But then it even kind of like, I'm just looking at the results of 2015, because even back in 2015, they went on a group with like an underpowered OG. And then obviously, this was with... LGD collapsed in their group, and they still couldn't get out. So this was meant to be, group of death. You've got KT Rolster and LGD. LGD fell apart. They did their job for them. And TSM only managed to take a single game, and that was versus the LGD, which struggled, right? Yeah. But then Orihen, who'd looked, obviously they were LEC finalists and whatever, we still thought they were a level below. And KT roster, sure, very strong team, Korean team in the Korean era of dominance. But like TSM going 1-5 in Worlds 2015, and then after like a 0-5 MSI as well. This was in the era where, Bjergsen was touted up there as not, as one of the best players in the world, one of the best mid laners in the world, one of the best players in the world.
Here's another reason it was always shocking to me, even though I'm actually sort of with Peter. Off the top of my head, I was a Jensen fan, so people even think I'm a Bjergsen here, which is something different. But I always had mad respect for Bjergsen's game. Put it this way, it's hard to think of games he like straight into. I don't think he really did that, but he definitely did do the Chovy thing of like, you are unreal domestically and then you don't do it internationally. Because remember, domestically, like, mate, if you were ever someone who was a fan of a rival of Bjergsen's, you have to bet your house on Bjergsen every time it's the bloody playoffs. He always comes through. He always wins the big game 4 to get you to the game 5, or he wins the game 5 where you think they finally got them and they're going to lose this time, and he pulls out the Zillion or pulls out a crazy Syndra or a LeBlanc, whatever it might be. He was so clutch domestically. He never did any of that internationally for me. So I do think it's a valid pick.
I think he shrunk under the pressure, which is sad because he became quite quiet. Regionally, he was known to being just crushing in lane, always going to carry the late game, very clutch. Never did that internationally. It never showed up.
I mean, do you blame him more than Doublelift?
No, but also 2015. Well, 2015 Doublelift wasn't there, right? Because the MSI 2015, Worlds 2015, different teams. And then obviously they had a lot of shared history. And then obviously he didn't have the success of MSI 2019, which Doublelift was on. So Bjergsen had like one IEM, right, where they beat Team WE and the G Tigers or whatever. Whatever happened in that bracket. I can't remember the specifics of it.
They beat WE in the final.
They beat W in the final, but that was like a weird bracket. But outside of that, like Bjergsen never delivered internationally. Ever.
Yep.
Here's the problem I have with it, though. This is also an example. Don't worry now, everyone who's not a mid laner. Now I'm going to be your champion. It is also a problem with the role. Like I've always said, and by the way, I should know this as a fan of people like Frog and Larson. If you are those types of players, you're a moron if you ever enter the game because you don't have to from your role, mate. You can just have very little impact, but look like you sort of did something, but then lose the game without being the one that dies in the team fight, has low CS and doesn't have any impact whatsoever. Like essentially, I think mid lane is the easiest role to also hide if you're not playing that well. I think that's actually also why the Chovies of the world aren't like all the junglers that have the it's a role like jungle where you have to actively engage with the map and the objectives that you're going to int the most. I would say for Doublelift, I think he gets away with it a little bit more, even though he gets blamed because he never did fuck all himself, basically, aside from that TL one. I think he gets away with it a bit more because the view of mid lane is the king role, though you're supposed to dominate if you're that position. Whereas if you're the ADC, do you even get online in the game? Is the draft even playable? Do you have people who can peel for you? You have more like built-in excuses, I think. I do think both these people, though, it is so weird because you guys will remember you were around then in the 2010s. Bro, people used to make it like Doublelift was the failure because he did all this shit, but then no one said shit about Bjergsen. I always thought the part that aged really poorly was Bjergsen's direct domestic rival, the other fucking mid laner from Denmark, was the opposite. He was having all sorts of runs to the aforementioned MSI. He was going to semis of Worlds. He was getting out, by the way, of groups almost every fucking time. He had that time he almost beat WE at like the 2017. He had so many times. He was like, so what's bizarre is he actually contrasted with his own rival internationally quite purely, but for whatever reason, maybe because there was a lot of TSM fight, he didn't really seem to get a lot of stick for it. Most people just thought, get him next year or something,
I'd imagine some of its fan base, and it'll also be the split between domestic and international success, right? Because Bjergsen at least had so much domestic success. And Doublelift had nothing up until, 2015, which is, I mean, it obviously, for most people listening, it's like, 2015 was ages ago. Yeah, but Doublelift had been playing since season 1. He did go to the season 1 World Championship, this guy was around since the very start, and he just hadn't had anything, despite being, again, touted as one of the greatest AD carries in the world at that point.
I think both are fair to include, though.
Yeah. No, I'm for people that just followed League of Legends recently, it's really the big part of this era, the Korean dominance era, is sure Korea was dominating, but they were never performing against number 1 seeds from any region outside Europe that were meeting expectations. Because EDG were always collapsing and TSM were always collapsing. So it would always be like Cloud9 holding it up, or RNG or Royal, being the team that was competing. So that period is always a what if, I'm not saying Korea wouldn't have won all of those titles. They would definitely have won those titles. But could we have seen an upset in a quarterfinal or something like this? There were 5 years where Korea, I think, just didn't lose a series to a non-Korean team, right? At Worlds. It was like 3 or 4 years in a row.
Of course, yeah.
Series of what? Well, I mean, you had
to a non-Korean team.
Sorry, was this any Korean team losing to a non-Korean team?
Yeah,
Because they lost because
It's easily 3 or 4
2014.
years.
2014 they lost because Najin lost to one of the Chinese teams
OMG.
in the knockout stage.
Oh, OMG, yeah, it was
That's the
And
one,
then-
though, as far as I know.
And then
That's it.
2015 was clean. 2016 was I think that
Clean
was
again.
clean. 27. I think it took up until like 2018 at that point. Yeah. So it was basically 2015, 16, 17. I think they were
It
clean.
would be until IG
13
beat
and 13
KT,
as well.
basically.
Yeah, and I mean this is always a what if era, because what happens if TSM don't underperform? What happens if EDG
Yeah, of
don't
course.
underperform? Right? Maybe we see a different history. I think that there is one NA player which is kind of contesting Bjergsen's crown though, which I think is Sven. And why am I going to say Sven? Firstly,
By the way, shout out to NA that so far there's been one human who was actually even vaguely NA, and even he I think was born in China, but okay, fair enough. Like, we're just saying NA, we mean NA region, obviously, gentlemen. So
sure. We mean NA.
a lot of Danes
NA
catching bullets here for NA, but okay.
So again, I'm gonna put Sven as being one of those guys, which brings hope to the League of Legends ecosystem. You know, all those losses that Cloud9 are suffering against Furia have really boosted, Brazilian ego and hope about their region internationally. So thank you for your service, Sven. But I think he's one of those guys who has this reputation. You even talk to some of, or you see the comments of some of the EU casters now, people like Vedius who were around at the time, they hold Sven in incredibly high regard because of how he was performing domestically.
Sure.
But internationally, he never showed up, and it was always about perks. It was always about could perks carry those series. And sure, he had one in. I remember there was an MSI that they were the number 3 seed going into playoffs, and they played World WE. Was it World Elite? WE or World Elite? I can't remember what they were called at the time.
This is
It was
2017.
2017
Yeah.
MSI, yeah.
And so he has that result, but that was just perks like stomping. Like, that was one of the legacy series of perks' career. And to me, this is a guy dominant domestically, never really shown internationally, has had some of the worst performances associated with his region attached to his name, often due to his underperforming. So I don't know if Sven is good enough that we can kind of put him in this list, but definitely his underperformances are there. But the
I mean, put
question
it this
is,
way, if people don't think he's actually a great player, he has an unbelievable resume for someone who's not a great player.
Yeah.
Like, this guy's been 1 billion finals and titles, role swap, everything,
Yeah. So I mean that's the only thing that makes me a bit hesitant to put on this list. But definitely, if we're talking about underperformances, he's underperformed a lot, right? And he, especially against Brazilian teams over the past year and a half, right? So that's kind of I put him as an honorable mention. But yeah, I think Bjergsen or Doublelift, whichever way you want to go. I had Bjergsen. I think one of those guys deserves a mention. Right?
By the way, to close this topic out, the saddest thing is, you are right, Peter, it's essentially this could have also been rephrased to which great players had the most tragic careers, because notice these aren't just like one thing you can have in League is maybe you only went to Worlds twice or something, you came fourth too many times in your region. Bro, these are people who went to Worlds year after year after year and just took it to the face every fucking time. That's why actually the funniest one of all are the ones like JackeyLove and Tia. It's like, you managed to even win Worlds in amongst all the taking the fucking L. Like, it's crazy. Like, that's how cursed your career was. You even won the big one and we still think he was some giga choker fuck up failure because you sort of were more often than you weren't. That's how cursed some of these. And also it sadly makes me realise that is really the tragedy of all sports and esports, isn't it? I always tell people, people don't get this. I don't actually pull for Chovy to beat Faker, but in a game that's shit and then Chovy just wins, because why would I want that? I want them to both play 10 out of 10 League of Legends, and then if I think Chovy's better, Chovy to win. That's what you always pull for, surely. But League especially does seem particularly cruel, specifically at Worlds, bizarrely. Some of these people even win the other competitions, or they go to MSI. Worlds specifically just brings some pressure factor that just destroys people's minds, mate. They just lose their head, don't they? As we say,
it's Faker's fault.
The red goes.
It's Faker's fault, no?
There's also, by the way, Faker also doesn't help, does he? If you there's another one. I tell you another counterfactual that would be really fun to do. Maybe we'll do it in the future. Is if we don't. I always say, don't be unreasonable. You can't go back and take a whole series. But if you were to go back and, for example, if the question was imagine Faker was 40% less clutch, so you just go back through history and you get a bunch of game fives, and you just give it to another team that's really good. Mate, League of Legends narratives are just instantly that's the time traveler moves a chair and suddenly pyramids are everywhere in America. It'd be that level.
The actual GOAT team.
The whole region of LPL, by the way, top esports would have won 1 million. You know what I mean? It'd be outrageous, the things that would have changed, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That would be an interesting one. Yeah, again,
We'll bank that one. We'll bank that one.
We'll
Right.
bank that one.
Speaking of which, we will switch now. So, since actually we're moving up in the world, we have some Polymarket for you guys. So if you go on Polymarket, they have this section. Obviously, they have games upcoming, they have props. Right. If you go to games, there's actually, obviously, we've got MSI running at the moment. So if you go on the props section, they've got one here of who is the winning region going to be. At the time of recording, today was the day where G2 eliminated T1. So actually, that's why I thought we'd pick this particular one. Because when it says MSI winning region, well, before that, even if you thought BLG was the favourite, the fact you had T1 and Hanwha Life understandably meant people were favouring LCK, because I'm pretty sure they just thought, well, I sort of get like 2 cracks at this door now. But now that it's essentially just, in theory, the best team from each of the regions, now the interesting thing is, the traders say they have LCK first, because a lot of people think Hanwha Life actually is the best. They're at 56%. LPL, who's obviously BLG, they're at 37%. LEC is now up to 6%. To be fair, they were much lower than that before. And LCS is at 1% because, listen, even Americans don't believe in Americans. So I just want to know from you boys, which region, since again, we're not doing it, it's really which team, which region is winning MSI, and what do you think? Where's the value here? Which is the right pick? Because remember, sometimes if you think BLG's comparable to HLE, maybe the value's in taking LPL since they're already at 37%. Which way would you guys go?
Well, this is the thing, right? I think the order in which they're there is correct. I would have HLE slightly ahead of BLG. I would have G2 behind those two, and I'd have LCS as, the last one. The numbers, I think, G2, I don't think they get higher than 10%. So, given that they're 6th there, maybe there's some value. I think it's a little closer between HLE and BLG. Now, I do think that HLE are the better team. But BLG are still an incredibly good early laning team, and I think they can keep Zeus and Zeka in check and maybe win through early game. I don't think they're favoured. Do I think it's 56 to 37? I think it's a little more in favour of BLG. A little more.
I mean, I think HLE are going to win. So it's hard to talk too much other than that. I think that BLG are a very, very good team. But it's, given the performances that I've seen so far, I think it's very hard to predict anyone other than HLE, no matter what the options are.
I'm going to go with the value is the LPL one here, because I think the idea, I think even if you think HLE's better, it's by a small margin and it's by stylistic elements. So to me, 37% for a team that I would consider at worst the 1B team to win the tournament, I think it's pretty good, actually. There's a lot of value then. Also, actually, what will make this mega, I'm so glad this is the matchup that we're going to see potentially twice, maybe at least in the upper bracket, is you also had that awesome style clash where if you can imagine a world where BLG actually just gets ahead at the beginning of the game, they can win the whole series no matter what they do with the draft. On the other hand, if HLE looks at the best drafting team, if they draft really, really well, and then they just early game people like Bin can't get ahead, then yeah, I could actually see them being the team that win. The other thing that's interesting is I was actually, as someone who wanted to BLG to win, more scared about T1, because T1's the team I could see hanging around in a late game, and then you do the one bad team fight, and then they win off that and get the objective. That's not really the Hanwha Life style to me. So I actually think this is actually a really interesting one. I think whoever wins on that, I actually don't think it ends up being a great say. I think one team's attributes a certain dominance over the other one. They just win heavily. So I'm very interested to see. So I think there's a lot of play on this one.
Yeah, I think HLE and BLG are actually very similar teams as well. So it's very volatile because they're basically playing a very similar style. They play very similarly around AD carry, where they leave them on weak side, put them on mage duty, solo lane dominance, which means that just random prep on the day can really flip it, which is really worrying. It's really quite close between the two.
It's also dope, actually, because, to be fair, assuming you take Lion out of the equation, all the other teams, at least for their region, are like super teams, too. They have, tons of mega talents and abilities. So, yeah, okay, let us go now back to our show. And for this one, we will do a fan take. So if you want to submit a take, subscribe to the Last Nation Discord. There is a channel in there, which is Shut Up and Scale, and you just put your question in there. So the fan take is Jonas the Cat says, you are in charge of LEC or LCS for the purpose of sending the best possible format of making good teams.
I think I misworded that.
Okay,
creating a format for the purpose of sending the best possible teams to send internationally. Assuming the league format persists, how would the 2027 calendar look? You may also change the format for all 3 Riot International events. So basically, we are a commissioner. We change the format regionally with the express goal of doing as well internationally as possible. You can also change the international events. So it's either for LCS and LEC. Sorry, I wrote it down in the chat wrong. But that's from Jonas the Cat.
Okay. Would you like to start?
Sure. Well, I think when I came into this question, I think what I had to do first is like identify the problems you have to contend with. You know, what do you need to do to make yourself more internationally viable? So one of the things which I think needs to happen regardless, more games. If you're playing in either LEC or LCS, you need more games. You can't be playing like 60% of the games of the top tier teams in the world unless you get like crazy random draws and lots of long game series and stuff. Which means that I think you do need to have a lot of best of threes thrown in there. And then the question becomes basically, do you have money as an object or not? I guess I'll provide answers for both. But basically, if money isn't an option, then you just have a million show days and you do a load of show matches and stuff like that. You just throw out as many as possible. If you don't have unlimited money, at that point, you have to start looking into simultaneous streams, playing games at the same time, and perhaps doing just online, just to up the amount of games. You need to have more high-tier competition. On that as well, I think that you probably need to have. We talked about this, I believe, in a previous. We might have even talked about this in the seeding issue in the last week, actually. And I think some of this overlaps with that. I think you need to have more like intermittent international competition to at least give teams a chance to get some practice abroad, even if they're like mid-table as well. In fact, actually, there was a interview with Chris Greeley came out today or the day before. We recorded this, which he was talking about. We're looking into more tier 2 international tournaments and maybe even starting to link up some of the developmental systems across the world too. That's really interesting because I hadn't thought about that. Perhaps that changes something too. But realistically, any kind of format change, and this is what I started off as effectively, you need more games, and I think you need more practice against top tier opposition. Those are the two real key things. The question is, in what specific format do you go for that?
Makes sense. Should I go first on, or would you like to go next?
You go for it, and I'll go afterwards.
Okay. So basically, I think that there's three things, three ways you could do. So the first is something which I think is already going to happen, which is have more interaction between the tier 2 leagues, right? I think that you can do that reasonably cheaply. You can have, so they had something called the America's, what was it called? The America's Super Rising Stars League, America's Rising Stars League or something like this, where they had, when LTA, the season before LTA, they had like the top Latin American team, 2 top Latin America Academy teams, the 2 top NA teams, and the 2 top CBLOL teams, and they played in a tournament, and that gave a lot of exposure to some of the rising stars. Just have that across all the regions, right? And give people the chance to show their stuff and play against other people, some of the emerging regions from the other regions, right? But I think that I have 2 major points which are for the tier 1 play. So the first I think is a bit unrealistic, but this question it's within the realm of this question, which is have a pre-Worlds tournament with all the Worlds teams in. Maybe even make Worlds a regular season and Worlds as the playoffs. I think you would see the regions get much, much closer if Worlds was 2 months. You just had
like
a regular
Super
season.
League kind of thing.
Yeah, you have like a Super League, and it, Worlds is 1 month, and you already see teams improving a huge amount over the course of that 1 month, right? But imagine all the teams are in Korea, or you force the Korean teams to be stuck in Europe, play European solo queue for 2 months, right? You're going to see the teams get much more even over time, right? As the teams that have qualified even out the level as more and more scrims happen, right? So I think that that's one thing that you can do. I think that's a little bit unrealistic because of cost, but again, you want to make the regions more balanced, force them to scrim with each other, force them to interact with each other over a long period of time, right? Second thing is, drop the ego that European teams and NA teams have about playing in play-ins. Playing in play-ins is a massive advantage. In the history of League of Legends, I genuinely believe one of the reasons why Cloud9 was such a successful team for so long is because they always played play-ins, because they were always like the NA number 3 seed, right? So you playing play-ins is a massive advantage coming into international competition, provided the seeding is even remotely reasonable, right? Like if I am G2 in most seasons, but not this year at MSI, but if I'm G2 in most years, and I have the option to go and say T1, go to the main draw, and I'll come and play in play-ins, getting those warm-up games is really, really advantageous, and this is not how people see it, right? Like, it's something to do with egos of fans, egos of orgs, or something like this. Sure, you can always have an embarrassing loss in play-ins, right? But given the gift of being allowed to play in planes, get used to stage, get used to meta, even shape the meta, get warm-up games is a huge advantage. And I think just having more top EU teams playing in planes is already a big advantage. Assuming that you don't have T1 in planes, then screw that, you know?
I do think one of the pitfalls for this, though, is I don't think, because I think one of the things which I jumped to is like, well, okay, could you just take the LEC and just put it in Korea? You know, if you really wanted, no cost was no object, could you just put it in Korea? And I actually think long term that would end up hurting, because effectively everything in the tier 2 scene and all of the players in the US server or whatever then don't have the top tier to practice with themselves. You know, you just kill your development there. Yeah. So and I'd imagine that's a conversation which is had before. In fact, I believe that. I mean, I remember interviews going around before where people were theorizing whether G2 had said, oh, we'll just go practice in Korea for a split because we're already pretty much guaranteed Worlds, something like that. I think that was in the year where if you won one split, you're almost guaranteed a split, whatever it was. Something like that. So... But I do think one of the other things I was thinking about is international roadshows. You do have, I don't think you do this very often, but we talked about this before, international roadshows, even just holding an LEC match and then a show match in Korea or in China. Just go to their stadiums, go to LoL Park, go to the Shanghai studio in China. You don't have to go do like the whole roadshow kind of thing, but being able to just like get some face-to-face time, fly out there. It's a lot of travel time, it's a lot of cost for sure. That's a big problem. You need to work with visas as well. I think that stuff like international show matches and the way that a lot of sports do this too for economic reasons, but I also think getting used to different places to play and playing against the best teams, tapping into more local audiences, activating different teams across the world in ways that they wouldn't before. That's a big thing. And having show matches and maybe even just holding like regular season matches, not even within your own continent, but actually doing it somewhere else in the world, that actually might help to give you some more scrim connections and to give yourself some more different practice mid-split as well. Because it feels like every time a team goes internationally from LEC, LCS, it feels like they are just, oh my god, the scrims are so different, the meta's so different, we have to catch up for Worlds. If you get a little bit more of touching base with that throughout the year, I think that could also really help.
Put it this way, the way I've done mine is I've essentially just thought what I think the reasons why the gaps exist between the West and particularly LCK, but it applies to the LPL like 90% as well. And I've essentially just come up with simple solutions that don't like completely change the game or what the circuit is that would apply. So essentially one of the first ones for me is obviously the practice issue. That is twofold, both individually for solo queue, LCK/Korean solo queue is way better, but also the LPL super server is really good as well, right? The obvious one there is you fix that by just allowing, if not a circuit that has more stops in Korea and China, you have to make a circuit that in the West allows more room for people to do a 1 week boot camp or to go to Korea for a week. That's a way to just physically, logistically solve that issue. Similarly, obviously a major problem a Western region has is the scrim quality isn't as good. Again, if you can go to Korea for more boot camps or go on more occasions, just even for tournaments, you will get more chances to scrim, which by the way, it feeds into a bigger issue, which actually Peter just addressed, which I've always agreed with. As someone who comes from other games like Counter-Strike, by the way, Counter-Strike's not even the best example. The best example is Dota, because Dota has a Counter-Strike open circuit, but then it doesn't have Koreans in the same, but it had Chinese at one point in time, well, like the Koreans. At one point in like the 2010s, they had the most elite teams, and often the team that was the favourite. But the reason why the best NA or EU team was way more competitive at the time than any Westerner would be with the best Koreans in league is because their circuit meant you played them every month. They weren't some weird like other that existed on some other dimension that you have to go through a portal of qualifying to World. No, you played them every month. So certainly they could still be better than you. But I always describe it as it's actually unfamiliarity that is one of the weapons of the elite Asian team. It's actually why if people don't get, it's built into it. They don't just give you the odd scrim when you get to the Korean boot camp for Worlds and then go, you're not good enough and do it. They also do it because if you're a waste of my time, I'm already leveling you up at that point in time. So why would I? If you're shit in the first couple of scrims or I hear your shit from the other Korean team who's the third seed, maybe I don't play you because why do I want to give you a little chance to catch up before we play in the real game? You just meet me on the stage, on the Rift as it were. So I think familiarity is a big one. And at the moment, unfortunately, that's the main thing that the league circuit has always made a massive issue because you just don't get as many chances to face these people. Then similarly, even though this is more of a lesser one because let's be real, most of these teams don't get out of groups anyway, I do think when it comes to dealing with pressure, one of the worst things to ever happen to Western League was COVID because COVID just converted convinced everyone, actually, isn't a studio finals for a split sort of the same as a stadium finals? And also, it's a lot cheaper, and it means we can just, run the... Well, the problem is, even if, yes, I understand people have played plenty of stage games who lost at Worlds, it's still pressure, though. You want people to be really bedded, because I always think to myself, I mean, the famous example I always give is, if people knew how many actual finals Abidage made, he never played on any stages as far as I know, except when he was in Turkey, and then he went to the Worlds, and unsurprisingly, that's going to be a different level of pressure than essentially being in the studio. That's the same as the worst players team, and the same as the winner of the league. So I've always thought, people like that didn't even get thrown into, think about it, even the fucking military give you a boot camp where it's stressful, and you have to figure out how to get, people like that were never getting that. They were essentially having a very cozy life. Then we threw them straight in the deep end of a tornado. I don't know what you're supposed to do at that point. And then the last one, it's tied into the more game ones, it is absurd to me, especially in the era of Fearless, that we not only have fewer games in the West, we have fewer best of fives. What are we doing? They're already better than us anyway. They already draft better anyway. And they're getting more official reps. Because I'm sorry, you can do 1 million simulated scrim block drafts, and that none of those count towards what it's actually like to do a real draft in a massive best of five. And also just, you want playoff experience for people. You want to at least approximate what you're going to face in a big tournament. So I think essentially these are the major problems. Again, there's many ways you can solve them. I just tried to pick the simplest one. I tried to just pick the one that cuts the god. You're not just put the guy in Korea and he's on the same solo queue. Give him more matches in the... an obvious thing I would immediately do is scrap this shit we have where in the LEC playoffs it starts as a BO3 and you only earn the right to play a BO5 if you make the upper bracket 5. Just have it all be BO5. Have it all be double and BO5 and we'll just... That's such a quick solve as well. I don't think that's even that hard.
I'd imagine the reason for that is that they need to put 2 best of 3s on the same day for scheduling issues. But basically at that point, I think you do. But again, if you want this not in terms of entertainment and viewers, but you want it for competition, which is the point of this.
Yeah.
Just run them simultaneously. Just do 2 best of 5s and do them simultaneously at that point.
Yeah,
if you need to use if you're trying to make that in a real world scenario, if you have to use co-streamers for that, so be it. That'll just have to be the way that it is. I know that simultaneous streams we tried that before in Europe and it was a bit of a mess, right? That definitely didn't help in some ways, or at least it wasn't very well organized back then. But yeah, I think that you need more games. You just need more games. I think you need more best of fives. Completely agree with that. I'm also
by the way, you also referenced earlier, but we didn't actually follow up on it, is they've already done this on a smaller scale. But another obvious thing, as Chris Greeley himself had the epiphany, spoiler, you just saw it happen for 3 years straight, mate, is just have a tournament also where the 4th, 5th and 6th team from each region play each other. People don't get this. This happened almost off stream because no one gave a fuck. It's actually so important for people like FlyQuest that they played against those shit LCK teams. Yep. I will bet that has given them a whole new perspective on international league and what it means. Even though for us, they haven't gone international yet. People like Griffin just sat waiting to come to an MSI, right? But I think, again, that's another familiarity thing. And also, we brought this up on talk shows before. I'll tell you why that one's a sleeper, boys. Because here's the thing. When we're comparing regions, we're comparing the cream of the crop. So if we're telling people like El Yoya, earlier in the show, you're a failure, mate, because if you go ahead against T1, you get your shit pushed. Yeah, but here's the thing, mate. What if he'd had half a dozen tournaments where sometimes when he finished 5th, he got to play against some fucker on DRX? He might actually be able to win that series. That would change his perspective on what Koreans are. Guess what? All Koreans aren't gods. Some of them are just all right, mate. Yep. Hence also why the plane thing's a big deal. That's also why you can get that in planes too, at a lesser degree. Sometimes it's just your 3rd or 4th seed, sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think as we talked a little bit about it, something like this in the last show, but you have tournaments where different regions are seeded, right?
Yes.
And maybe you have 3 teams. You have 3 teams from Korea that go to MSI or something like this, right? Or 2, and you have fewer teams from Europe, but then have the tournament that you play for seedings be between the 2nd place EU team and the 4th, the best teams from each region that don't go to that international tournament, right? And that's how you can expand it, because that kind of self balances. The more teams from Korea, let's say Korea the best region, the more teams from Korea you have, the lower their seed is that's going to be competing for.
By the way, I do have to mention one thing as a lawyer who cares about things always being exactly correct. I will point this out. You have also invoked a dangerous demon, the person who asked this question, because I hope you understand all those things I ran down there would have an obvious knock-on effect. That while yes, you would have way more upsets of LEC and you would also get more Vietnamese teams beating Western teams and things like that, though, mate. And you'd get times where, by the way, fuck around and a Japanese team might actually win a fucking best of 5 yet. That will happen eventually because they're going to be in the same mix, but they're going to have more tournaments. They're going to be going to Korea in this analogy too. They're going to get to go to these tournaments. So it will also give everyone a level of parity more in that sense, I think. Yeah.
What do you guys think about revolutionizing tier 2 scene for EU as well, and maybe collating it into a LEC 2, like the Challenger series before? Well, because it feels like the ERLs are kind of like a little bit more like diluted in terms of talent now. I mean, obviously we have Emir Masters. I think Emir Masters is good. I also think, by the way, adding to this conversation, I like that LEC versus, for the case of this, does bring up, again, for the financial reasons, I understand there's a lot of issues for it, but I think that for the competition reasons, having stuff like, oh yeah, by the way, ERL teams can go show their shit against you. I think that's a really big thing too. So
this is why me and Peter already have this. It's you just do the European NLB.
Yep.
So when Vitality fucks up the playoffs, guess what? You go and play Galleons and Solari. Let's see how you do against them. I think that's awesome, by the way. I think that I'd do that tomorrow if I was right. I think it's dope for everyone.
Dude. Actually, I hadn't thought about this, but actually, basically, if you have your qualifiers for LEC and then you fail to qualify, you can then run again in the bot side, but it's optional. So you can either play for like better seeding, perhaps, or for like qualification in the first place, or even just practice. Like, and then there's like a slim chance for the tier 2 teams to make it through to international events through the lesser qualifier because they don't have access to LEC, but they can still make it through there if they're good enough. Yeah. Like, that's pretty damn good for lighting a fire under teams' asses.
Also, by the way, I'll tell you another thing, because actually you made a point earlier that we should actually key in on. Because he's asking us to specifically solve for this. He just said not in an insane way, like you can't have a tournament where you don't invite any, like one LCK team. Yeah. You can't do it that way. You have to do it fair. Essentially, one of the points that Nymaera just brought up is actually very relevant, which is, I'm sorry, Riot, one of the reasons they haven't done a circuit anything like Thorin once is because they've come to it with a bunch of predetermined like assumptions of things like, I can never have 2 games on at the same time. Everything must fit within the same day. Maybe there's even certain hours I have to fit in. Maybe I have Valorant to show in a studio on a different day. And so a lot of the things that we already have in Asia can't be done in the West. Like I'll tell you an obvious immediate way, boys. We can not only have LEC, but have LEC versus without the LEC teams complaining. Spoiler, have the LEC splits be shorter. Have everyone play every day of the week. They do it in the LPL. But again, we've just decided in the West these things aren't possible. So unfortunately, we've pitted ourselves into a corner on a lot of these things in the West. But if you were taking inside Riot's concerns and you were remaking the circuit that way, like you could still have it that the teams who paid the millions of dollars, LEC is really important. There's 2 splits still, 2 or 3, but they could just be like 3 weeks long. Instead, our problem is we stretch them out to like 8 or 9 weeks, and then we say, sorry, there's no more time left between the splits, so we can't have any more tournaments. So it can actually be both and if you're willing to do the Asian approach, essentially. Because if people don't know, one of the things I love about the LPL, especially in the day where you have the OP group, is every day there's banger games, literally every day. It's mega. It's genuinely, people thinking that thing of like, isn't there more Thorin? Wouldn't I get bored of then League isn't for you, mate. Like, I'll never get bored of watching an Eagles Legend play PLG. I'd watch that tomorrow.
Well, I mean, and next split, so for instance, next split, we're going back to probably having multiple 3 best of 3 days. So I think we're probably going to have like 2 or 3 days a week where there's 3 best of 3s. Now it's hell on me because I cast all of them, and which is not, it's hell on me. But like for entertainment perspective,
this is why you always have to be fair. And if you are actually someone who's in the industry, you can't do it purely selfish. Like spoiler, that sucks for me. Sometimes I have the day where Nymaera or Yamato's like, I'll do it after the LPL game, right? I've had times where I woke up and was like, right, I guess I can get a 20-minute nap. Then I wake up, it's like they're on game 3 and there's a timeout, and like, the other way around, I go for the nap and I wake up and it's like the game's already up, it's a 3-0. And then that's hell. But I'll tell you what, I'll take that for a bettering of the region. There was that one
game in Split 1. There was one game which ended up having a chrono break twice for the same bug, and at that point I'm like, this is taking the piss even for LPL standards, I think it was like where like a red buff got killed and someone couldn't pick it up, and they're like, wait, this is really important. They had to remake it twice. And
also, that's also mad for the players themselves, because again, if I'm a player, think of being a coach, Peter, I'm prepped for us to play at 1 p.m. Oh, sorry, guys, we play at 5 p.m. Do you know how much that throws off everything? The food, the scrims, when we got up, did people sleep? It's insane, isn't it? But again, you have to take, if you want the region to be sick, though, you got to take
LPL,
some hits,
They used to have fixed times. They did before last year before, I think 2024, they used to have like the games on, it wasn't a rolling schedule, it was a fixed start. So if it went late, it meant that the LPL English broadcast got basically shafted because we had to cover every single game. We could cut the breaks out, but we had to cover every single game start to finish. And that meant that if it got delayed in one series, you wouldn't be able to catch it live on the other ones. Part of the reason why co-streaming killed LPL is that they just gone to the second series, which was more interesting if the first one went long. But anyway, for broadcast standards, like a lot of what we're suggesting here would be very hard for the current form of broadcast and the current financial spending of leagues to go towards. So I don't think we're going to get that many more game days comparative. Opening up an entirely new tournament is a big expenditure unless it's like online or something, and even then, could be a problem. But like if you leverage, I mean, if you're going to use,
by the way, the obvious angle for that though, again, we can just learn from the past. You get to go to the ESL of the world, say, do you want to run a third party tournament? You know, make them third party, don't you? Cut the costs.
Yep, exactly. You give them to a third party, or you use your co-streamers, or you get teams to host big parts of it as well, which is what they're trying to do with the road shows, right? I think there are ways to continue having games out there. And I think particularly, like, the biggest complaint over the last couple of years has just been, where are the games? You know, and it's even worse for LCS. We're talking for LEC mainly here. LCS is even worse. Like, they've got such short splits. Yeah, such short splits. The bare minimum is play more games. That's the bare minimum. Outside of that, you need more top-tier competition and potentially more international competition. That's what you're really aiming for.
But I think we're going in the right direction, right? And why I think this is because of an innovation CBLOL had, right? So CBLOL had this thing where if you're the number 1 seed, you go to international event, right? But if you're the number 2 or the number 3 seed, you got a boot camp paid for you, right? That was because you know there wasn't that much budget in CBLOL for these Korean boot camps. So this was a way of essentially finding ways to fund other people having these boot camps. Now LCS offers those. LCS, I think, offered like a paid boot camp, and now you have teams that are in Korea, right? Like it's not optional, because in the past, you know, for it wasn't Demacia Cup. What's it called? Kesper Cup. For Kesper Cup, the reason why Cloud9 and TL were there is because they were just in Korea boot camping. So it just happened that people in the management found an agreement to have it work. But if you're funding boot camps for these teams, now you know that you're going to have international teams there, so you can plan around that in your schedule. You can have these. You already know at this point for Worlds, or at this point next year, you're going to have, let's say, 2 LCS teams and 1 CBLOL team in Korea if you want to do another version of these tournaments. So now you can already plan these things a year in advance. And I think that shows that. You know, we've criticized Riot a lot, but this is at least one way that we're already going in that direction, right? So I think that's a positive, you know, to give Riot their kudos there.
Oh, one other thing I just remembered as well. There are some countries which really want to start investing in esports too. I mean, Macron in France has talked about it, like Sadiq Khan in London's talked about it as well, as Mayor of London. Like, if you can actually get some kind of like national funding for shit too, and actually hold things within specific locations because cities want to like leverage onto esports, that is a huge fucking thing to use as well. I know they want it for like the very biggest events, but like if that can be used to hold more homestand kind of things, get local audiences, like hold ways to like get boot camps there as well, for like invite teams over. God, you can even do pseudo diplomacy this way, right? Where you like invite international teams to go do a boot camp at places. Use the political connections you have too, genuinely.
I'll give you another angle as well. If you want to also, and this is a way you can also actually enforce the ecosystem, which in theory, hopefully in the future would produce more pros, etc. You could do things that they haven't done so far, because again, we've been too restrictive. Like, I'll give you an example. How about actually when there's like a famous French team, there isn't really right now, but in theory, it could have been a KC in the past, or BDS or whatever, or you Spanish teams, you obviously literally have MCOYs almost entirely Spanish. If you have a team like that, why not do again like a cool regional thing where like the winner of the LFL plays BDS when they were all French? So that's like their prize, is they get to play a show match against them, where you either put like bragging money, or you put money or bragging rights or something like that on the line. Something cool like that. I think things like that also enforce the ecosystem itself and give you things to play for.
Yep. No, I agree. But just one thing to go onto Nymaera's point about the diplomacy thing. We already know how this is going to happen, right? Like what's going to happen with the Sadiq Khan stuff and all the Macron stuff is it's going to funnel on T1 and maybe Gen G, right? Like those are if you have an event, they're going to just want to have T1
of course,
there, right? But for this to work, it's not about getting T1 there, right? It's about getting like Dam1 there. It's about getting like HLE there, okay? HLE, and that's the thing, right? You can't just have T1 every single event. Oh, we've got to get Faker at every single event, right? Because that gives the leverage, so much leverage to T1, right? They can just pick and choose, and they can pick and choose favorites. You need to have a more diverse system of how teams are going to be invited, right? And I just put that as a highlight. This is what scares me, that this isn't going to work. It's a massive opportunity, but knowing how these things work for somebody like for in politics, I fear that it's not going to work out in a way that should be beneficial.
Even if it just gets to the point where it's easier to get visas, though, I would still call that a win. Even if it is just easier, like admin paperwork, because I mean, for instance, a lot of the stuff around Paris is like France has a lot of weird forms you got to like fill in to do stuff, right? If you just have a bit of help with that, it makes a big difference. I mean, when I went out to China, when I worked out there before, the paperwork was very stressful. Stuff like that is a factor for any kind of international tournament. I'm sure both of you have had different experiences from being on both talent and on organizing parts as well, trying to work with paperwork. Obviously, a lot of what we're hinging on here is, okay, there needs to be an improvement of games within the region, the practice culture as well, but also opening up the door for there to be international kind of cross-pollination as well. Yep. This is genuinely important stuff to help with that.
Yeah. Okay, before we go to the third topic, we do have another poly market, which actually, right on cue, obviously they also have game matchups, like actual fixtures here, as well as props of like, will a team make a roster move, who will win the region. So I thought a good one we could do, since obviously like the timing of this might mean we can't do the MSI ones, is next week is EWC, if people don't know. EWC starts something like 3 days after MSI ends. And so if you go on EWC in the games section, I thought this was the most interesting matchup. We have, fully enough, because actually interesting, even though this wasn't intentional, EWC actually sort of ended up being one of the, not the best teams play it, because the qualifiers were so wacky in every region. So believe it or not, Anyone's Legend and Dplus, teams that aren't at MSI, are actually at EWC, and they're going to play each other directly. It's a close matchup. So at the moment, people are favouring Anyone's Legend at 59%, Dplus at 49%. Who wins this matchup? A little bit of analysis, and which is the one that has the value to you?
This is really hard to pick.
It's a fun match, though,
really hard to pick. Yeah. Immediately, I see Anyone's Legend, 10% up on that, right? I think it's closer to a 50-50 for me. This is pretty even. Now, obviously, both of these teams didn't do what they wanted to in playoffs. I think that, for instance, Shu had some really bad games. I think that Lucid took a bit of a knock as well. But on the side of Anyone's Legend, they've really not adapted well to the non-lane swap meta. They've had to be very, very aware of how they approach the game in regards to Tarzan, because Tarzan is their only win condition. Like, if Tarzan gets ahead, then the game plan falls into place. They can get into team fights. They're very good around that. But the way that they get into team fights is basically Flandra just leaves his lane and just walks into the enemy jungle at level 1, because he knows that basically their standard lanes in top lane and bot lane are not good enough to support Tarzan through regular laning phase. So they need to just do some wacky level 1 plan where, like, even in a volatile top lane matchup, like Vayne versus whatever they counter right now, like Vayne versus Jace or something like that, he would walk down, Flandra would walk down into Tarzan's starting camp, leash for him, or protect his jungle start to make sure he gets ahead. And my problem is, I don't know how much of that Anyone's Legend have in the bucket. I think they're still quite a deeply flawed team. So I think the value is on Dplus here. That's my feeling, although it has been a while since we've seen both these teams, and that does worry me. The volatility to the level of prep from these teams as well could really put this in a direction.
I mean, the volatility is the thing that is interesting in this series. If you ask, the thing about Anyone's Legends, as you say, is it's about Tarzan, and Tarzan has historically underperformed against Korean teams. And I think that is something that you have to bear in mind coming to this. Anyone's Legends are not going to win unless Tarzan gets his advantage, right? And I think that Damonkia will have, Dplus will have something planned in order to stop this happening, right? We know that their prep has generally been pretty good when they go and play against international teams. So I think in a best of one, I think that they'll have something, a surprise ready to stop. I think that they're not going to lose to Tarzan, right? Maybe they'll find another way to lose, but I don't see anyone else being able to carry the game for Anyone's Legends except for Tarzan, and I don't think Dplus are going to allow him to do that.
Yeah, the funny thing is, even though generally I prefer the Anyone's Legend team, and I do think on paper they should be better, I actually do think Dplus will win this match. And the reason why is, first of all, for all their failings, actually at the end of the split, especially in the road to MSI, Dplus was winning a lot of the early games, bro. They were getting ahead like tons of these games. So if you do that against Anyone's Legend, I think you just win. Because I'm with Nymaera. I do think Tarzan is the clear standout player. Like, he gaps anyone, and the jungle support duo of Anyone's Legend is better than Dplus. But I don't actually see how they'll get to impact the game that much. I think they'll just flat out just lose. And sadly, the real decay this year of anyone's legend has been at the traditional carry positions, unfortunately. Like, they just are really underpowered there. Like, you'll notice, no one's even dissing him, but you notice no one brings up Shanks' name anymore. He was supposed to be the next great Chinese mid laner who was going to be cracked out. If people don't know, and to give you a contrast point, Cream is a better mid laner than him right now. That's not a troll. Like, he just is. So sadly, actually, anyone's legend isn't really, they never have recovered from last year, basically. That was the one year, that was the window apparently. It was kind of cool, but they didn't do it. They could have won both MSI and Worlds, but they didn't win either, unfortunately. So it's kind of done so. So I actually think the value is on Dplus. I'm with you guys. I think it's close anyway, but since we're getting in on this early, this market was just created. I think 49% on Dplus feels like a steal right now. And also traditionally, it's also not unfair traditionally to just say typically when teams are of equal that level, typically the Korean team wins. That's just typically the way it is. Like a bit like you need a G2 to beat the LCK top team. You also usually need like a Chinese super team to beat these top LCK teams. So I actually do think Dplus gets this one. Okay, the last topic is yours, Peter. So what is it?
So my topic is about EU. So this is the question that I see asked the most, and I see the most narrative about Twitter on Twitter, which is, are EU teams stupid in their recruitment process, right? So my question is, the EMEA Masters structure is kind of one of the best talent development structures in modern League of Legends. Like, I think everyone agrees on this. It's good for developing players, good for developing coaches. So given that we all know this and most people seem to agree, why do LEC teams continue to import so much, especially mid-season? Are they stupid, right? Or are they like really bad GMing? You know, what is our approach to this, right? Is there a defense for importing Koreans in the mid-season, especially not very good Koreans, like specifically Vitality, have chosen to import? Fnatic may be a little bit less to blame, but for Vitality, is there any justification for this? So
I've got two I'll throw out because they're sort of big ones and then people connect how they are. The two obvious ones to me is this, Peter, right? In a way, I do think the baseline level of pro level player in Korea revolves around having by default better mechanics. And unfortunately, if you're just going off like a solo queue or a challenger level game and you see that a guy has what look like really strong mechanics, I think that's very appealing to some coaches and they think I can plug and play this guy and pop him in. I would actually say like Ice is a good example of this in Europe. I can just get this guy and put him in and actually I'll take care of the rest elsewhere. Then also, the reason why I bring that up is because I think a lot of people still to this day do scout off seeing people in solo queue. And I think another reason that goes along with this is I think Koreans take solo queue. I know they have a better solo queue, but they take it way more seriously. So I actually think in general, when you see someone who looks like a stud, like a lot of people don't know this, some of these players might have never been top pros in LCK, but some of them have been so high up on the Korean solo queue ladder and they maybe had a month where they looked awesome against literally Chovy or fucking Ruler or some cracked out player. So that's an obvious reason why, again, if you're trying to like be the guy who's finding the next hidden gem, you're going to think you got it. And then lastly, that's that phrasing of hidden gem is key because as much as you say, Peter, it's easy when they fail to go, why did they recruit that guy? He wasn't even good in Korea. Bro, the stories of how many players were on the bottom Korean teams who come to the West and look like the MVP is outrageous, bro. Think about, you could go down the list, mate. You can go from like the fucking Berserker's just showed you it, mate. He was God in LCS, nothing in Korea, back to God in LCS. What? That you look at Jun, mate, Jun looked like Carrier when he played in fucking LEC. When he was in Korea, he was just an alright player. He was like, yeah, he's not bad, I guess. Like, you know, no one was raving over it. So I think Loki, he's back again. I bet he'll look fucking insane to be all pro team first, mate. He was going to be now in Korea. So one of the problems as well as Peter, it's not like they never succeed. I know it's pulling from a lottery, but the difference is if you go into the ERL and do the lottery, it feels like you get it 1 out of 30 times. If you go into the Korean one, mate, I might even be generous to say you get it like 1 out of 5 times or something like that. The perception is you've got a way better chance of pulling the hollow out of the booster pack. So that's my idea of getting down with the kids, like referencing Pokemon. Whatever. Go on, boys. Go ahead.
Hey, I've been pulling Griffbound cards recently. I got a over-number signature. I've been doing great. Gosh, what was I going to say? I think, because the question which you wrote to us in our chat for this, Peter, was also about, like, why is EU recruiting mid-split from elsewhere? You know, why is it? Because I think that, you know, there are more rookies that come in during off-season than there are mid-year. A lot of this is just due to the deck is stacked against ERL teams. They write contracts so their players don't get poached by LEC teams when they start to struggle. So as far as I'm aware, buyouts for mid-year from ERL to LEC are fucking high. They're high. So realistically, just getting any Korean player is going to be I don't know, what's a benchmark? Like, it's going to be a lot cheaper. It's going to be a lot cheaper to go from Korea. Now, and I think the other thing is as well, is that when you are importing mid-split, midway through the year, rather mid-season, rather than mid-split, you're not looking to develop into a full package. You need someone that can deliver you results immediately. So, for instance, Vitality, they just brought in Fiesta. Humanoid's gone. Okay, what the hell? You're not going to develop someone into a humanoid replacement in half a split, get your results in the other half of the split, and then go to Worlds. You need to have someone that can basically plug and play. This is what we need from you now. We have enough tape on you because you've played long enough in Korean challenges or an LCK mid to bottom tier team or whatever, for us to have enough information on you that you play the style that we want, and we can at least have a known quantity. That's what happened with Poby.
Yeah.
I presume it's what's happening with Fiesta, and I don't blame these players at all. Do I think they're always going to succeed? I mean, Thorin brought it up there. No, of course not. You are kind of digging into the gacha bag a little bit. You're just figuring out what'll happen with that. But you are still dealing with more known quantities than players who haven't played Tier 1 before or haven't been on as rigorous a scene as like LCKCL. Because yes, ERLs are great. They are incredibly good for promoting talent. LCK Challenges is still the best talent factory in the world, bar none. Like, there are levels to this. And I think that the price is just the extra kicking point where it's like, okay, we don't have to, pay a buyout for the most promising of the talent from ERL. There are also some other issues with the ERL stuff in there too, which is, again, we can revisit that first point before that. But the second part is effectively, I think that the lack of upward mobility for so many years in ERL has stifled talent development and particularly stifled talent motivation. Now, this has happened to a certain degree in every role. I mean, I think it's happened in broadcast to a certain degree. I think it's happened within coaching to a certain degree. I think it's happened to a bunch of other roles. And now that the economics of ERLs aren't supporting a full lifestyle when you're in tier 2, people in tier 2 are struggling outside of the very top teams to pay good pay now, as opposed to like in 2022 where you get like you could get 6 figures for being on the best ERL teams. Like, I'm not kidding. You could get over 100 grand for being on the ERL teams. Fucking crazy. Yeah, more than that. Well, not in 7 figures. Obviously, it's like 6 figures, but like you could get good money for playing in tier 2. That's just not the case now. You're in a position where you are struggling to get by in tier 2, so you have to figure things out while you're a student. Well, maybe not as a student all the time, but like you have to figure things out in a much harsher way, which means that like a lot of ERL players, the ERL talent, it's not in the best situation that it's ever been in. So again, it's just a point against ERL talent, which is less motivated, perhaps less strong than it would have been in some years past.
I've got a similar one. Oh, go on. Let me make this one point, then you can go, Peter. Yeah. Basically, the reason I want to say this before you say something is because you won't like this. So, my favourite points. Sure. One of the reasons why, Peter, actually, in a way, you have cursed the LEC to be like this, because people like you always promote the idea of taking the rookie talent. Here's the problem with the rookie talent versus the established player. If an established player has one bad split, we already have enough film and track record that he could recover. If a rookie fails right out the gate, the perception is, I don't even know if he ever will be good at this level. So unfortunately, I do think a lot of people panic and go, I mean, I can't just put this guy in for 3 splits in a row and tank it, because let's be real, isn't a built-in reason. It's sort of a side one, but it's always hovering, is for a lot of jobs. You always say that like players should get 2 years. Man, I think coaches should get minimum 2 years. Like if I start on split 1 and it's already rocky, and split 2, the split 1 is shit, and then I know for summer I am fired from my job if I don't get like to Worlds or something, I'm gonna have to smash that red box that's got a Korean in it, mate. I'm gonna have to press that panic button. That means I bring bloody Hillisang or Niski back. I'm gonna have to do something, mate. I can't just go down with the ship with this rookie that I hope to be good but hasn't done it for me so far. So unfortunately, I do think a bit of it's a knock-on effect of the fact that people already are gambling on the rookies. So when they fail on the rookie booster pack, they go for the fucking other one over here, the Korean one, as the super booster pack in that sense, you know.
Sure. I mean, I think it also plays in a bit that a lot of the top rookie talent, because of the changing in financials, doesn't want to gamble anymore.
That's
right.
Big,
You'd rather take your chance in the off season. You'd rather get your ideal resting spot rather than being the stopgap, right?
But there's an example of this. Last year, wasn't it the case that Isma originally was going to go to KC Blue, but then he came back to come to GX? Like that was in a one there where I think it's implied he wouldn't have played for like the worst team in the league, or maybe it was this year that happened. I forget which one.
I think it was last year. He ended up playing.
He went from SK to KC and then back or something like that, right?
To Giant X, right? I think he went from SK to KC Blue, played in EMEA Masters for a bit, although technically I don't think he was meant to be allowed to for some reason. And then he ended up on Giant X in spring, and he bounced back quite well, actually. Yeah, that was the case. Yeah.
And then similarly, I know for this year, it was implied in the off-season that like half a dozen teams were in the mix for Exakick. And then it was implied like maybe he even said no to some of them also, because he also thought, again, why am I going to come in the league again, go to a bottom team, look shit, and then ruin my whole career? That certainly is a factor.
Oh yeah, no player wants to sign a one-split contract. Like, remember what happened to like Na'Vi brought Tiger in, right? The jungler. He's gone now. I mean, like, now, unfortunately, they had Rilek in the background.
His window's gone completely,
Yeah, so sad for him. I mean, you can look back at some. We've talked about the misuse of rookie talent before. I think that Xmati was promising. Obviously, didn't have a great start, not a great situation. Dumped, never saw him again. A bunch of other players could fall into that. I mean, there was who was the SK80 carry before Yoppa this year?
Rahel?
Or last year? Not yet, Rahel. There was German bloke. German bloke.
Oh, German one. Oh, well, like
German bloke.
Kedui or whatever. The guy, the BDS guy.
Kedui. Yeah, because Kedui's been grinding for that for forever, and I actually think that he was deserved of a shot. Only had like one split. He actually did all right, but then he's gone anyway. Now I was saying, so I think talk about player motivation from ERLs and actually people who are developing and actually given chances to develop in top tier. There are a lot of factors working against actually. Getting players motivated to join your team, especially mid-year. Everyone's seen the blood for that kind of contract before. It kills players' careers.
Yep. Also, generally, this may sound weird to say, but a Korean importing somebody from Korea is often cheaper than importing a top ERL. Like, if you're importing somebody from Korea, I guarantee you Fiesta is like on minimum. He's on minimum. So I don't even know what the minimum is. Is it 80k still? Like, he's probably he's for sure he's for sure minimum. Whereas if they were trying to import, let's say Oman, right, they probably have to pay 120, 150, right? Like, so is my guess. Okay, given
with the buyout and everything, it's a lot.
But I mean, I think that if I was a GM right now, I would. And I found the right player, I would try to negotiate, maybe sign a long-term contract and have them pay their own buyout, so they get paid a little bit less in the first split, but then they get paid more in the second. I think there's ways that you can do it, because the buyouts aren't like crazy high, or maybe they are now, but I remember buyouts were like 20 to 50K.
The buyouts are pretty high, I think, right now, as far as I'm aware.
They're really high.
Because I was hearing that basically a lot of the players who you would want to approach in ERLs have prohibitively expensive buyouts mid-year.
Okay.
Now, if they're on, I don't think many people are on multi-year ERL contracts really, but the buyouts like during like your regular end of year off season, then you can approach that stuff. Now some players used to have approached by LEC contracts where the buyout would be much more forgiving. Not every org does that, and I think that basically at this point a lot of teams are kind of tired of getting screwed over by. Basically getting their players just like jumped up to LEC and then that screws their season.
I'll give you another reason that's a cultural one, Peter. Even though it's certainly not a hard and fast rule, spoiler, look up players like Summit if you would like an example, or Piglet, right? But the perception also of Koreans is they'll just shut up and play the game. There's one less ego in the room. The perception is whether he succeeds or fails, he's just going to sit there and grind like a robot and play 1 billion hours of League of Legends. For a coach, if you're in a panic station, like I say, Peter, everything's on fire and you don't know if you're going to get fired, that's not a bad player to try and gamble on. The guy might just sit in the corner and play the game a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, like, this is the point that... So we've covered all a lot of the points, but this is one point I wanted to actually talk about, which is that generally when you have a team, your team is focused around a certain core, right? So let's take Fnatic, okay? Who have 2 imports, right? Which is Vladdy Razork. Now, should that be the core that they went with? Who knows, right? But they've decided that their fate is going to be tied to the Vladdy Razork core. You don't want to have too much interference. Like, if you can just get a placeholder to fit somewhere else in your team to fill that core, that's kind of what you want, because you don't want the way that you win or the way that your roster is focused is on those guys, right? And they often, I feel, coaches and orgs think that they can just sign a placeholder as somebody who fits in the role and who can just stick there as a top laner and fill that role, right? Now, and I think this is important to remember. Like, this is where I think there's a debate in whether these guys are right or not, right? Which is, one of the things is, why is Targamas not in the LEC? Right? Targamas obviously deserves to be in the LEC, right? Like, I think he is for sure one of the top 10 supports in the league, right? But why is Lospa on Fnatic and why is Way on Team Heretics? Why have these guys not approached Targamas, right? Because Targamas has said that he wasn't approached, right? Like, he said that he would.
By the way, if you don't mean that rhetorically, isn't one of the reasons why that in certain cases like those ones, I believe they often let the player decide, right? It's not a coaching decision. They just say, which player do you want to join with you, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the problem is that in these situations, you sign Targamas to Heretics, the fate of your project is now tied to Targamas, right? Like, you
sure.
you put him in a bad situation, it's natural that his fan base is going to go really, really hard on other people within the team. Right? This is just you have popular players on teams which have less popular players on. The fan bases of those popular players will naturally go and apply additional pressure to other players on the team.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And maybe if
That's
you have
true.
rookies on your team, that's not something you want to happen
Yes.
if you want to develop players, right? So this is often, I don't know whether this is fair or not, but this is often something, especially in rookie projects, that teams are thinking about a lot. They're thinking,
Right.
how good is this guy as a leader? Right? And often a lot of the top talent we see in ERLs, especially the veteran talents, they're not necessarily leaders, right?
Yeah,
On a team, but also they're really concerned about how much pressure is this signing going to put on the rest of my team when I want to have maybe a low pressure environment, right? Are they right or not? Who knows? But that's just something from behind the scenes that is maybe a slightly more cynical reason why you don't see people that deserve to.
Sir, I have a quick Thorin question.
Yeah.
Sir, are you not Peter Dunn, the coach who imported Japanese top laner and Korean mid laner to your project, sir? Did you not import them, sir? Why did you not take them for the RL, sir? Sir, what about the RLs and the rookies, sir?
I think that's more than fair. And look,
Just wondering. It just was in the back of the mind,
look,
you know.
I will say directly, like, if there was somebody who had the leadership credentials of Evie, I would have signed that guy, and that guy was European, he would have been signed to the team 100%.
Okay.
Like, Evie wasn't signed for his gameplay, although. Okay, I'm not going to.
Although you secretly think it's good, we all know that. Look, you're in safe company. In theory, you run the only call ever where it'll be 2v1 on that topic. So you're okay on this one. It's all right. Don't leave. You can come out to play.
Look, I have my own opinions on it. All I'm saying is I got to get I went out to go get ramen with Ebby. We chatted about LGL and life. It was great. Do I talk about his Heretics performance much?
Okay.
Perhaps not.
No.
But I'm glad he was here on a personal level, on a professional level.
We can all agree, DFM legend. Exactly. We can just all agree that.
He's an awesome human being. We all agree Evie is an awesome human being.
Seems like a great guy.
He's a great guy. He's a great guy, right?
Yes.
And
I'm doing you a favour. It's so that you don't go, as you inevitably will, into the comment section and see someone like, is Peter Dunn, the guy recruited Ruby, really talking about import? They're going to say it, Peter. They are going to say it at some point. So I'm giving you a chance to get ahead of it, you know.
Well, I think that's more than fair, right? And what I will say is that often players have large inputs into roster making decisions.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
And this is what I will say about Ruby.
These are the lines we're reading between them.
I'm going to be very careful. I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus.
No.
But what I will say is that often European players who have bad relationships with people that they've played with in solo queue and have grudges that go long term into the past, for whatever reason, may choose, because they will see, this guy is a Korean guy. He's new. He's not going to be the guy that I have this disagreement with.
Yeah.
I don't want to play with.
There's no baggage.
Of course, the Korean guy. He's a magical solution to all of our problems, right? And I'm not going to say anything more than that.
Peter, I have said this.
So funny, actually.
I have said this many times in the past to young pro players, even though sadly, because they're young pro players, they don't listen by nature of being young pro players. I have told so many of them, unironically, if you just stop fucking typing once you reach the semi-pro level, your career is going to go 100 times smoother. Because again, like that famous saying of, the people that you fuck with on the way up and the people you meet on the way down, bro, the guy you're talking shit to now in a semi-pro team might be the guy you actually need to vouch for you 2 years later. And you would get in on your ability, but now you won't, because as Sid, you've just given him a reason to go, you know what, actually, fuck it, pick the Korean guy instead. By the way, one other reason as well, I actually do agree with the premise though, Peter, I can see where you're coming from, is this. Even though I've just said what I think cynically is why people do panic moves and they try to save their job, I will say this. If you are someone where it wasn't that they were forced on you could choose these players and you chose rookies or you chose a squad and then you get to split two and it's all gone to shit, maybe actually have a look in the mirror and do some coaching, mate. That is your job at the end of the day. You did choose those players. You can't just blame the players. You chose them. Maybe one player needs to be replaced, so I agree with that. But the ones I think are the worst is when people make two swaps or something. It's mate, where is your responsibility in this equation? Your job to turn those people around, to get them on. Whatever you saw in them that made you sign them, try and get it out still. Surely you can't pull the ripcord after one or two splits, for fuck's sake. I'm with you on
Again,
that,
like,
mate.
and it's better than, like, I don't know, the LPL support swap fiascos right now, where they're just like,
Yes.
oh, guy just failed, let's just swap supports for the 4th time. Like, it's not just like, there are bad GMs everywhere, folks.
Yes,
this isn't just an EU thing too. Put it in perspective. Anyway, go.
Well, that would be a great way to import, though. Here's the way to do elite importing. Just wait until an LPL team with an up-and-coming, really good rookie support fails. Just make a bid. They'll probably say yes. You can have him. You can have Era on your team. You can have a Fenway on your team.
I've got like 5 you can probably... Yeah. There's this pack here.
They'll do it. They'll kick these guys out, because I'll tell you, that's the harshest. I know what you mean, Nymaera. We're thinking people harsh in EU. They're pulling the cord after you have one bad game 5 or something. I know, it's crazy.
As we record this, yesterday we were hearing that, or was it even today, that Fengyue, after going to MSI, second split in Tier 1 Pro Play, 2 days after the failings of Top Esports, has been kicked probably from Top Esports. Are you kidding me?
By the way, you can... Yeah, he's getting kicked out.
Probably gone.
Yeah.
Like that's the rumor. I know, right? So we can talk about how shit it is in LEC. What is this?
Yeah. And also, I'll throw this in there. If you think about what's really nuts about that is, you can actually imply that whoever fucked up not swapping the jungle and support picks got this guy's career killed. Like, so essentially, the draft bug fucked his career. Like, what?
Yeah. I mean,
that's it. What a world.
All I'm going to say is, I welcome an era in League of Legends where it is made very clear why roster decisions are made. Orgs don't have to protect the people involved. And, you know,
will that ever happen, though?
Well, fans begin to realize how much influence GMs have, how much influence coaches have, and how much influence teammates have. And I will say that, you know, there are different levels, not every GM that makes what appears on the outside to be a stupid decision makes a stupid decision, right? Like, and I'll say the GX example, right? The GX are probably going to be worse next split than they are this split, but I don't hate their changes simply because they weren't going to go to Worlds anyway. Everyone's contract expires, including Jun's, at the end of the year. Just flip it, right? Like, you weren't going to do so. You know, even if they do worse, that's not a bad thing, right? So not every dumb GM move is necessarily a bad GM move. First thing. Second thing, not all coaches have final say in roster decisions. And third thing, there are some players who are god tier GMs. Pucks.
Very few. But yeah.
Yes, but I will say that the thing to realize is players often have a very, very large amount of say over roster decisions, and not everyone is a Perks when it comes to GMing.
But it's really, I even think that I'll make a semi-joke, semi-serious point about that. That is actually one thing, unironically, that they actually miss about Perks, because here's why. He couldn't do it now in G2 because he's not a player anymore. Unironically, what they miss is this. Because Caps actually is probably just too much of a good boy, well, when you actually do this, like, you know, behind the scenes, you go to KC and you say, hey, we'd like to make a formal offer from G2 for Callista. I understand his contract's running out, right? Yeah. If you do that, that is very different from, let's imagine if Perks would have just found a way, he'd have met them in a bar, he'd have messaged them on a Smurf account. Right. He'd have just, if Caps himself had said to Callista, listen, mate, just fucking join with me and we'll start winning the shoe. That might have changed that move in a way that you don't if it's a formal request, you know what I mean? There's a reason why Perks and Ocelot knew how to bend the rules just enough to get their own way every time. Yeah, for sure.
And I'm going to say one of the victims for this has been Inspired. Because, like, Inspired, there's a lot of players who, because he has the reputation of being toxic.
Sure.
Obviously, now everyone is like, oh, Inspired is great, right? Yeah. But when he was in EU,
no.
It's not the coaches that are saying that Inspired shouldn't be on this team, right? First thing. Second thing, I think Inspired has learned from this experience. And what is the thing that we saw when Berserker got the interview? He's like, "Why are you back in NA?" Oh, Inspired messaged me. Inspired messaged me. Like, come to NA and let's win, right?
I think it's a really underrated player for real. Like, if people don't know, it actually is done in traditional sports too. Like, if you have a legendary player or one of the best players do the message, that carries so much more weight, bro. So much more likely the guy's going to be flattered. Really think about. He's going to start imagining playing with you. It's different when the formal request comes to your org and they have to do. That's like so artificial and sterile. It doesn't have the same hit, does it? Like I say, if Caps reaches out to you and York listeners goes, bro, listen, you could never really do it the way like me or Perks would do, which is like, I've always thought Hans Salmon wasn't even that good anyway. But you know, sadly you can't do that in the modern day, that'd get leaked. But I'd just do some gangster shit like that. You know, me and you together, we'd never lose. I'd do some ego stroke shit like that where you get the guy on board, you know. Then all of a sudden, Casey's like, that's weird because Callista's requested a transfer now. Like, yeah, exactly. Again, Perks
I
in
hear the
Whirlpool
hot tubs are wonderful this time of year, you know.
He's the
Perks
king.
was so good. Like people, this is the.
That's why that meme was
underrated.
amazing
He was
during
so good at
COVID,
it,
when they
man.
had to keep
Holy
going to
moly.
Iceland and every player was in a giant whirlpool because everyone was saying the joke like, "Holy shit! Like Perks is like going to be unbeatable. Like he's getting faker now because everyone was in that giant like hot spring or whatever the fuck, weren't they?"
man.
Yeah.
I mean,
my
Perks,
gosh.
if Perks was a GM in Europe, like, okay, Perks seems to be, like, you know,
Yeah.
he's tweeting a lot during MSI, right? And I think he's pretty happy being a coach. I think it's pretty good. Like, Perks, it has an insane mind for the game when it's something that isn't involving him, right? If
Yeah.
it's like a dispute between two teammates, he's the best. He's, like, so good at it, which means he'd be a fantastic coach. But if
That's a
Fnatic
really
wanted to,
important
you know, if Fnatic wanted somebody to make their next project, you know, wanted somebody to be their next GM, you know, I can't think of anybody who's better than him if you could get more.
Funnily enough, I think that's a really good. This is a tangent, but this is a really good metric to judge someone on their professionality when they have to design something which isn't meant for them. So, for instance, I've worked with a lot of people on broadcast, and one of the ways that I actually really rate people, positively or negatively, when I work with them on broadcast is how often, how willing, and how good at you are designing segments that you don't appear on. Is it just good for the show? How good are you just doing something that's good for the show? Now, of course, there has to be a level of I know what I'm good at as well, and I know what's best for me, and I know that if I do this, that's good too. You need to have a balance between the two because otherwise you remove yourself from the show, and also on just sort of bluntly job security / job progression level as well. You need to put yourself in the picture as well. But genuinely, in a lot of walks of life, being able to take yourself out of the picture, or at least judge when you're not 100% needed. And of course, the ultimate kind of humility part of that is actually realizing actually it's better if I'm not part of this. That's a really very difficult skill for, I think, particularly a lot of young, quite ego-driven people to learn.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a teaser topic
Go on,
if
then.
you'd like
Ooh.
for next week. Okay, so I have designed this one, and I thought we should open up things a little bit. So this is going to be very different from any other topics. I want you two and myself and anyone in the comments to build the best roster of player names of all time. What are the coolest player names, official pro player names of all time? It's going to be a little bit different. Get creative with it. Create a theme for it. What are the best player names of all time? Make them into a team.
Okay. I love this one. Okay.